Hi, everybody. Welcome to Talking Teal, Season 8, Episode 4. I'm Joan Cohen.
And I'm Mimi Torchin.
And we are Lady Parts TV, and you're fabulous. And we'll get to that in a minute.
And so long, nice to have spoken to you.
Episode 4 was chock full of so much, and I have a feeling we're going to be going into another 2-hour episode of Talking Teal.
Let's not shilly-shally then.
Shilly-shally? Yes, let's start with the charities, and this time we have something a little different, doing a little bit more emphasis on the environment today. And so, Mimi, would you please read our two
Yes, this is called 4, as the letter 4, ocean. And what they say is, we're here to clean the ocean and coastlines while working to stop the inflow of plastic by changing consumption habits.
Right. So there are so many things that we could say about so many organizations that are supporting the environment, and I don't know if you feel as desperate about doing something about the environment as we do. And certainly the fires going on in California right now are something that I don't know.
Down the road a piece. I think there might be something specific. But these guys, they started off as two divers. They went somewhere to Bali or someplace gorgeous on vacation to dive, and they were horrified by the amount of garbage and trash and plastic that was everywhere where they were. So every day they'd start to haul the stuff out, and then they got friends to help, and then they got boats, and before you knew it, they had a whole fleet of people cleaning up mounds and mounds of trash. And they make a little bracelet,
right?
Very sweet little bracelet made out of the plastic that they take out of the ocean, and I think if you give $20, they'll send you a bracelet.
And I don't know if you have seen the horrible images of fish and sea life
and seagulls
that die from all that plastic, from ingesting plastic, from choking on plastic.
It's not being able to open their mouths to eat.
It's horrifying.
Of the bottle holders, can holders from plastic.
Beer, yeah. It's horrifying. So anything that you can do to support that specific cause. And there's one thing that actually most of you can do, and it's not even giving money to anybody, it's buying something for yourself. And this is what we ask of you.
Yes. Since we say waste from disposable gloves and face masks is
understandably.
Thank you, honey. I can read. Is understandably at an all-time high. Do your part. Buy a couple of masks that you can wash and wear again to minimize waste. Make sure to always wash your mask at the end of every day. And there are such a plethora of funny, pretty.
However,
Nancy Pelosi has a mask to go with.
Matches with every suit.
Every suit she wears, everything she wears.
However, it is important that, many of these masks put the emphasis on the graphics, and that's nice, but you should also make sure that it's a good mask that has multi-layers, at least 3, that's breathable,
Cotton is best.
Cotton is the best, absolutely. No bandanas. Bandanas have actually proven to be the least effective.
Better than nothing, but the least effective.
Right, but if you buy a reusable, washable mask, a couple of them, especially if you go out every day, and then you can wear one, and then at the end of the day, wash it, and while it's drying, wear another the next day, and this way you minimize waste. I just actually today ran across a meme on Facebook that had a bird with a mask hanging from its mouth. So you know that these masks and these gloves and all these, we have to use them. It's understandable, but let's try to minimize the waste.
There must be piles of them everywhere. It's a side effect of the pandemic that's really horrific, and I don't know if a lot of people think about it.
Right, and there is something we can do, and I see people wear those masks that every day they throw them away, and, unless you're a healthcare worker or somebody who, has to change them every few minutes, if you just wear one, and make sure to wash them well at the end of every day, it's important, okay? Thank you. We appreciate that. And, if you do, send us pictures with your fabulous masks.
Oh, I'd love that.
Yeah, Doctor Who's mask, Broadway mask, there's a cat mask, there's so many of them. So send us a picture.
Vote masks.
Harrison Biden mask. So send us your mask pictures. We'd love to see that. And speaking of donations, you have given us so many gifts this week, and we'll read a few of them. And Rachel actually gave a donation, as we've been asking, but she gave it to an organization that she supports, which sounds fantastic.
I love it.
And Mimi, if you'll tell us what Rachel said.
I thought I would let you know that I have made a donation to Thestore.org instead of my usual perk purchase. The store operates here in Nashville, providing healthy groceries to those in need. They are currently operating on a pickup delivery basis due to COVID-19, but they normally operate as a grocery store for folks who are in need. People who are referred to the store can shop for groceries at no cost. The idea is to provide respect and dignity to those who are in need. It's a great organization started by Brad Paisley and his wife, Kimberly Williams Paisley, who played the daughter in the Father of the Bride movies. I wanted to do something to thank you both for all the work you put into this for us each week. You really are amazing.
Well, you're amazing.
You're
Rachel.
amazing, Rachel. And thank you so much. This is a wonderful sounding charity.
Yeah.
I know, here we go again. Biden is always saying that his father always said to him that a job was more than just a paycheck. It was also dignity. And people who are in need their dignity as well. And I think that this is really a wonderful charity.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rachel. It's a wonderful gift. And we have a couple of other gifts from people who gave gifts in a different way.
Oh.
Well, I mean, gifts to us
anyway.
And we really appreciate it. And I just want to read what they said because their words were the gift. So Diana says, "This is the point where I say thanks for being so welcoming to everyone who wants to contribute. I don't even need you to include anything I write. I still feel part of the Talking Teal online family. It's a tribute to how welcoming you make contributors feel, that I feel free to voice opinions that may be contrary." If you want to talk contrary, ask David.
Ask David. He's our little David, quite contrary. I don't know what I could make rhyme with David.
But thank you so much. Thank you to all of you for taking times out of your busy schedules to write to us. And yeah, this would be nothing without all of you. So thank you so much.
It would just be us talking, and how boring could that be?
Well, we don't find it boring on our daily life, but I don't know.
We love to talk, but
Lily says, "I'm sure everyone noticed that this season the Talking Teal episodes are way longer than the last seasons, for my greatest pleasure, and I was wondering why. Do you receive more emails this season? Are the emails longer, if possible? Or are we just the most brilliant and passionate Wentworth fans?" My answer is all of the above.
All of the above, and I also have a theory, which is COVID-19. We aren't watching as much of other things. Some of us aren't working. Of course, that has nothing to do with COVID. I'm retired.
No, but you
all might be.
You might have more
time on your hands, and want to distract also from what's going on in your town, your state, your country, the world, and I think that's part of it.
Yeah, I think you're more engaged. I mean, I am getting a lot of emails, and a lot of the emails are long. I think also maybe we fought to get this show back, and you're in it. You're there, so we appreciate it. She goes on to say, "Whatever the answer, I'm still amazed that after 8 seasons, people are still so invested in this show, so observant for the smallest details, and so imaginative about the crazy theories. Thanks to everyone who contribute, especially the ones that are here since the beginning and they contribute every week. Hearing their names every week, it's like a landmark. And of course, thank you for all the hard work that you do to offer us Talking Teal."
That was from Lily.
That was from Lily. This almost feels like a rap party kind of email, but since a lot of you actually mentioned these things this week, I figured I'd say it because, again, it's not just to us, it's to all of you contributors. And Garrett, who is a new contributor.
Hello, Garrett.
Wrote us, actually, first he sent an email to introduce himself, and then he sent his email with his remarks.
I like that.
And I really wanted to read his introductory email because this is, again, it's not just for us, it's all of you and the people who have been writing.
It's our Talking Teal family.
Yeah. After last week's welcoming invitation by me, in a reply on a comment I made in regards to defending Wentworth against Orange is the New Black comparisons about the recent food strike, which was a common source of conflict in Prisoner, I've decided to pluck up the courage and take up your offer of adding my views, which may be of use for your shows, on my love that is all things Wentworth, not forgetting the minor few frustrations that can linger throughout the season until the finale. Oh, and I think this will make me male number 3, following in the footsteps of the legend that is David and you, Ryan. This is just a side note for David, who keeps apologizing for not being more concise in his emails. As you can see, David, you are a legend, so don't worry about it. You've reached the status that allows you to do anything. I just want to say thank you both for creating Talking Teal. I actually first discovered your vlog when you interviewed the incredible Libby Tanner way back after season 3 and have been a regular watcher ever since on YouTube. You have supplied me with hours of entertainment during my chilling out downtime, and I sincerely appreciate all the hard work and cost that goes into Talking Teal. Your regular contributors are amazing. They can go into such in-depth analysis of the show's episodes each week on its characters, writers, potential plots ahead. They will be for sure a hard lot to keep in contention with, but I will try my best.
Well, all I have to say is, Garrett, what took you so long? We're
Well,
glad to
pluck
have
up the
you.
courage.
He's plucked up his courage.
I am so welcoming you guys. Well, I think actually,
so am I.
I think he's talking about the other contributors and how fantastic you all are. And may I say, Garrett, reading your email, you can feel very confident. You're just as fabulous.
Absolutely. Everybody who contributes is amazing. You're all analytic and you're enthusiastic and you're fabulous. We really love you, and we really do feel like we're our little family.
And I do want to say though, even if you're not analytic and even if you don't send long emails, oftentimes it's just one line that presents a completely different perspective. And maybe this is an answer to Lily and why our episodes are long, because I just find that you all have such different insights to offer. And so oftentimes I say, well, okay, so these two comments are sort of the same, so I'll choose just one of them. But so often you each offer a different perspective, and so I include them all. And so no email is redundant. You don't have to pluck up any courage. I love all of your emails.
Even if you don't speak the language, you write, I know, like, and.
You know what? You can write in Spanish, you can write in Hebrew. We have had a Hebrew email.
Yes.
You can, a little Hungarian, but not. I don't go far on that.
No.
A little
Let's
Arabic.
try to stick
with
to
English, Spanish, and Hebrew. Okay.
Let's try to stick to English and Hebrew, because Liron is totally facile. We both speak Spanish, but we're I don't know if we're translation.
We
can get the nuances.
If you do a lot of swear words, I can do that too, especially. Yeah, that would be great. An email
French
full of swear words. Well, Lily can do that. All right, you guys, enough with the chit-chat, because that's how we get to 2 hours.
That's right.
Revenant! The episode written by John Ridley, and that is a legend, a Wentworth legend. And as soon as I saw his name on that screen, I knew it was going to be
we did.
It was going to be an excellent episode. And directed by Beck Cole, of course, because it's her second episode. And let's start with, Jane sent us a couple of potential explanations for why it's called Revenant. From the French word revenir, to return. It can mean several things, and it probably does mean several things. First of all, the obvious, Joan returning from the dead. Secondly, Kath Maxwell through Joan. Maybe. It could be interesting, actually, again, if they, take Kath Maxwell from prisoner, and that's how they're returning her through Joan. Mari from protection. Jake as a protector, maybe, or maybe as some of you actually thought different aspects of Jake returned this episode. The three amigos, Vera, Will, and Jake, which everybody referred to as three amigos in these emails.
Sorry if you thought you were unique in that.
No,
anyone.
When certain things repeat in various emails, I tend to think that there's either been online chatter or spoilers that have been posted.
Or it's an absolute. It's something you absolutely can't miss.
Yes. And chaos in general. Yes. Definitely back.
And for Leo, it meant an Oscar, right?
For who? Oh, Leonardo DiCaprio. Yes, I didn't watch that movie. Okay, your overall thoughts on the episode, starting with David.
Well, now, that was a Wentworth episode. This is the first time this season it's actually felt like its old self. I've loved the season up to now, don't get me wrong.
Oh, we know, David.
But the first 3 episodes were about introducing the pieces, and now the game has begun. Very, very nice.
A chess night?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And what a stellar first move. We're starting the final leg of the climb, and the summit is in reach. And I was just going to say that I agree. I even loved Joan this episode, and the Pamela rape who blew my mind
is back
in the first in the early years.
Yeah, because I love that we got to see her in all of her, as the governor, as the insane person in the.
It used to be so hot watching her fence. Yes, I loved that.
It was definitely almost like a highlight reel.
It was very, very good.
It was really nice. Well, I just want to say that also I think maybe the fact that they wrote and shot seasons 8 and 9 together, even though they're still shooting, but
No one's supposed to know that.
But I think that maybe because they were thinking they were playing like a longer game of 2 seasons together, maybe they were taking their time. Maybe the pacing is a little different this season because it was like a 2-season thing, even though we'll be getting it in 2 separate years. But maybe to them it felt a little different, the pacing. So
maybe. Anyway, and I agree with you 100%, which I don't always do, David. But where is Sheila? I need her.
And by the way, those of you who thought, like we did, because IMDb had her listed for episode 5, she was now moved to episode 6. And I don't know if by episode 6 she'll be moved to episode 7. I'm really losing
I'm just wondering if she's just not a tease.
No, she's there. I mean, they wouldn't do it for us.
I know.
She told us?
Well, she told everybody.
Well, I wish we could say she told us.
No, she didn't tell us.
Robin said, yes, made up for the lackluster episode last week. And Karen says?
Oh, I was just thinking it wasn't that lackluster. It just wasn't great.
We said it was an orange is the new teal kind of. Teal is the new orange.
Yes. Karen said, I don't know about anyone else, but I really enjoyed this week's Wentworth, even though it did border on the ridiculous at times. But then again, this is Wentworth, and it just keeps us coming back for more. Nearly everyone seems to have had a personality change. Mari not wanting to murder Ruby, Allie wanting to murder Mari, Boomer not bashing or murdering Mari, and Joan, who isn't Joan, not recognizing Vera, Jake, and Will.
Yeah.
Totally 100% agree. And we even liked Ruby this episode.
Well, yes. And everybody had kind of a big shift in their personality, I would say. But
not everybody.
Not everybody, but a lot of big people.
A lot of big people.
And we will have to talk individually about each one of them and see if we believe that change in personality
I think that runs through.
Yes.
We eventually get to just about everybody who might be questionable as to who and what's really going on with their little selves.
Teresa said, overall, I was very impressed with this episode. It felt like Wentworth to me instead of Wentworth is the new orange. I'm really not buying this whole Mari thing going on, and I'm not yet sure if I buy the whole Joan thing yet, but we'll have to see.
That's the fun of it, isn't it?
Yes and no.
Kind of.
Yes and no.
Unless it goes on too long.
Yeah. So, who should we start with? Should we do the obvious? I think we have to, right?
Of course.
It's
the obvious for a reason.
Right. We're going to start with Joan Kath Maxwell, the freak Ferguson. Isn't that a mouthful?
A mouth what?
A mouthful. I like that I managed to get the whole name right, but fell on that. And let's start with Ryan.
All right. Ryan says that one of my favorite things about this episode is when Boomer, Jake, Ruby, and Allie reacted to the news of the freak. You would think the writer saw some of the filmed reactions of people screaming, no, 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 at their screens, and that informed their own writing.
Well, maybe they actually watched the Talking to You from last year when I had videos of people responding to Joan being back. And maybe that's what they did.
Maybe. Oh, yes, it's probably us.
Yes, it's always us.
It's always us.
Okay, so Robin says, loved all the Ferguson flashbacks and her internal struggle for her identity. I'm betting she's completely aware of who she is and, as predicted, is using this perfect opportunity to fake amnesia and take her time assessing and planning. I also predicted it was Murphy who helped her. Now, we're going to talk a little bit now. We're going to read some of your comments.
A lot of people have things to say about that.
Before we get to the obvious question, let's talk about the backstory and what they did with it, and did it work for you or not? So, starting with Lauren.
So the freak is back. You know what? I really don't care for the storyline, other than once again hoping that she meets a super nasty end. Honestly, I felt a little tired thinking of us being dragged through another Joan Ferguson storyline for potentially 2 seasons. When Allie snarled, "You said she was dead," tried to snarl. I once again felt that disappointment that Bea is not yet truly avenged. By all accounts, Joan was dug up by Murphy soon after Will finished digging, burying her, I guess. Yeah. So, was Joan actually afraid at the end of season 5 when she saw Bea's picture above her face? If she had someone coming for her, then how could she have been truly terrified? Well, I think just a few seconds,
Yeah.
moments
It's pretty
of being
claustrophobic, but it
buried
does,
alive is scary. But it
does take away
mitigate it
from
a little
yes.
bit. Yeah, it really is a massive slap in the face to Bee fans. Remember, we were told Bee has to die to make way for new stories. Yet here we are, back on a Joan trajectory yet again.
You do have a point. They seem to keep finding new stories for Joan.
Yes. Why is she the big threat of Wentworth when Bee couldn't be? The writers made it work, and in one sense I am glad that Joan did not supernaturally escape out of her box. She would not have supernaturally escaped.
Well, like being the Hulk that she is.
Oh, yeah. Well, she is a Hulk.
Smashing.
She needs help. She needed help. That part, at least, was more believable. So many questions, though. Joan had a phone, something that is notoriously hard to get within the prison walls, yet she had one tucked in her mattress. And all the flashbacks. Oh, my God, I did not want to go on a Joan Ferguson flashback journey. I'm guessing this was to show the confusion going on in her head. Obviously, she does remember Joan, but perhaps she has made this choice to be Kath instead. Only time will tell if she seriously thinks she is Kath, or will be a different character, or whether it's just more Joan subterfuge, designed to play psychological mind games with her prey.
Well, Teresa said, Joan is so talented, she's even playing mind games on herself. And
I love that.
And before we go on, I just want to stop here and say I was really super surprised that I did not get at least 2 emails going into the analysis of every single shot of the flashbacks of her mind, because there was so much there to mine.
It was amazing.
It was, and some of you have some psychological theories that I lay out here, and they're very interesting. But I really wasn't, because I was already totally ready to have to do it frame by frame and see what happened in her mind and try to analyze it. And the analytical person in me really would love that, but then I thought, oh God, I don't have the energy.
I don't have the energy.
So
yes.
if you had sent it to me, I would have done it. But since nobody even raised it, I was like, no, all right, we'll skip it this time. But there was really...
It was massive.
It was massive, and because, again, the Wentworth writers never do anything just as a throwaway. They don't just say, oh, let's throw some goldfish in there. They don't. Exactly, and apparently there's an episode coming soon called Goldfish 2. So everything has a meaning, and I would have really enjoyed going on that journey, but because there was so much to talk about, I didn't. But if anybody wants to,
but they really did an amazing job. Even those little snippets of Joan sort of courting Vera.
Absolutely, I love that you use the word courting. And I do wonder, and I have
grooming is probably more like it.
No, but
there was courting her.
Some
yes,
there.
Absolutely.
I do have it later on when we talk about Vera. I put a question there that it was interesting that she was only one flicker of it, but Vera was in not nobody else. There was absolutely nobody else. Joan, variations of herself, and Vera. So interesting, but we don't know yet what that means. Okay, go ahead, Diana.
Diana says, I was really disappointed when I heard that this character was being brought back. Ferguson was always given such superhuman powers. I ended up getting bored with the character. But with my Lady Parts hat on...
Which, by the way, I don't know if you know, but we actually have a Lady Parts hat. Exhibit
and
number
our merch,
8. Yes, and you can buy it, and I'll have the Zazzle shop link here if you're interested.
But with my Lady Parts hat on, I allowed myself to consider what would happen if the brain damage she suffered meant that Joan returned with an altered character. A kindly, well-meaning woman trapped in the body of the freak. Could make for interesting drama. Of course, as it turns out, it's all an act. Well... Oh, if it turns out it's all an act, or she suddenly reverts to being the freak in the final episode, well, I'll be very cross, and may even toss a few soft furnishings around the room.
And as long as they're soft.
Yeah. I'm in total agreement with that. I think it would be way more interesting just to have it be real.
Well, let's hold off on that. We have a whole discussion. Is she faking it or is she not? Okay, Ryan says, for 2 seasons, fans were talking about a DNA test, and now we have our answer. A DNA test was taken after all. The mystery behind Joan's survival of being buried alive was not an Uma Thurman Kill Bill style punch and claw upwards. Rather, it was Murphy
Someone
alone.
else mentioned
I know.
Kill Bill.
Yeah,
wow.
I never saw it, but I guess...
did, but now that you mention it, that's right.
Rather, it was Murphy all along. It makes sense, as it seemed too convenient for Murphy to follow Vera, Jake, and Will to check to see whether the body was still in the ground back in season 6. I have a feeling both of you, Mimi and Liron, will not buy this backstory, but I am sold. It's convincing and makes sense in order for the Murphy blackmailing Vera storyline of season 6 to have substance. Also, I doubt Murphy would have disappeared gracefully after being fed the story that B. Smith used her swipe card, which led to her dismissal. So, as to whether or not we believed it,
I can buy it.
I thought that all things considered, using Murphy actually made sense.
Yes.
I didn't think that Murphy on her own would be able to dig the whole thing out. I'm like,
Somebody mentions that.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm sold on that, but I certainly was like, what the fuck? She had a phone? How did she get a phone?
I didn't even think about the phone because it's Joan Ferguson, it's Wentworth,
Yeah, no,
and it's drama. You have to give some
right.
dramatic license.
That's what I'm saying. There were certainly holes. It reminds me of the Frankie trying to escape in the van and doing the lug thing to the car, the van. Anyway.
Oh, you mean hot wiring it?
No. When she tried to. I don't even remember. I remember that there was something with Frankie that we all were like, oh my god, it's so unrealistic. There are certain things here that are definitely unrealistic. But all in all, seeing that they wanted her back, I think they did a fair job at
I mean, I'm willing to buy it. I don't like any of it. I wanted or did.
I'll tell you what.
But I'm willing to buy it.
I'll tell you what I did like. I did like because at the time when we kept saying, why don't they do a DNA test and tell us who it is in the box? So I like that they explained that by saying, we knew all along, but we couldn't tell you because it was an ongoing investigation and we didn't want it to leak. We wanted to wait until she felt safe enough to right. And that made perfect sense.
Yeah, I was willing to do that, but I sure would have been mad if I'd been them. But at least they had some peace of mind for a while.
Yeah, not a very realistic one. But.
No.
Okay, Garrett says,
I am extremely disappointed with the explanation of flashbacks on how Joan got out of the box. Was it even plausible, her having a phone to be able to phone Murphy? We know she was top dog and had an alliance with Tina and Kim, who had a phone. But after the hanging, when she spent some time in the hospital and was dethroned as top dog, surely Tina and Kim would have managed to get to her cell and take back the phone before Joan was released from the hospital. And if the... okay, never mind. I was going to put in my 2 cents right there. Otherwise, I won't remember.
Same.
Which is, if Joan was planning to escape, she would have found a way to have a phone. Because she would need some help out there.
Well, yeah, but it's not like there's an easy way to finally have a phone, especially when nobody likes you because...
Right. Yeah. But she had, so much information on everybody. And anyway.
So, again, the explanation is because Joan is all capable and all, superhuman. So, not really an explanation. But that's okay.
And if the detectives were able to find out Joan phoned Murphy's number, surely they would have been able to... Don't call me Shirley. They would have been able to see some kind of transcript of the blackmail text messages she sent to Vera's phone from the phone company. But could she have? I wonder. There are records
Do they have
of text?
transcripts? I don't know.
But anyway, I'd like to hope they don't.
Oh dear.
And aren't they a little suspicious how her phone was not on her when dead at Vera's doorstep? He's talking about Murphy, right?
Yes.
I felt it was lazy and rushed, and how Joan got out with how Joan got out of the grave on the writer's part, so they quickly could move on. And Vera was very quick off the mark in being able to put the puzzle together and explain fully to Will and Jake what Joan must have done. When detectives told her that she phoned Murphy and her fingerprints were found in her house. Sorry, Mimi. That's me. But I was thrilled at the fact Joan popped up at the end of season 7. No. Typically staying true to the original. No matter how hard one tried, the freak is just too invincible and always managed to get herself out of the worst possible scenarios and come up smelling of roses. But this is the 21st century. Joan Ferguson, the woman who beat up 5 prisoners and, in her own words, put themselves into medical. I was looking forward to this episode because I wanted to see Joan pushed to her absolute limit by seeing her angry at the fact someone thought they were clever enough to confine her to a small space, completely powerless, having no control, and even worse, having all that dirt fall through the crack of the wood without a bottle of hand sanitizer in sight. Since they decided to bring her back, why didn't they bring her back in style? Surviving being buried alive is a huge deal. Love or hate her. I think it's fair to say if any character on TV could survive being buried alive, Joan Ferguson was the one.
Well, and Crystal Chappelle, right?
And Crystal Chappelle. I don't remember how Crystal did get out, but I don't think she clawed her way out. It's hard to imagine Crystal's character doing that. But
our friend Louise buried her.
yes, she did.
Days of Our Lives, people. Yes. What?
I was just going to say that he has such a different perspective because he knows the old prisoner.
Yeah, obviously very
and
well.
so that colors how you see things a little bit.
Well,
we came to it. Oh, I love the insights.
No, and I love that he said, but this is 21st century
Right.
Ferguson, because Wentworth is so much edgier than Prisoner, and so they managed to kind of keep a tether to the original, but then they take it and they push it.
Put.
Yeah.
I wanted to see action, drama, and intensity, and seeing Joan reach a whole new level of being a super badass psycho by going all Uma Thurman in Kill Bill, or in Joan's case, Kill Will, by kicking and punching her way out of that box. I agree. Go big or let her be dead.
Mm-hmm.
Brenda Murphy certainly didn't work up a sweat or get any dirt on her face from all that supposed digging she did, or need to climb on top of the box to break the wood open. All she did was put her hand out for Joan to grab hold of. The whole thing felt like an unrealistic, rushed miracle. Why would Brenda just watch Will try to kill Joan in such a slow way of having to dig a hole first? Couldn't she have picked up a rock and whacked him across the head with it by sneaking up from behind?
Personally, I think that if she had just
What's the
thrown
fun
a
in
rock
that?
in his direction, he would have and run away. So
This will win. Anyway, what's the fun of that, right? Whilst I expected flashbacks of Brenda Murphy, I was disappointed just how brief they were. Again, I would have liked to have seen Joan turn up unexpected at Brenda's house, ask for help, tell her how it was Vera who framed her to get the sack, and see them come up with the blackmail plot. We never saw Kath Maxwell and how Joan came into contact with her.
That's another thing that I found a very big hole in the
Yes.
story. I mean, really, Joan Ferguson, Pamela Rabe's body is not something that is easy to find a double for. She's actually she has an unusual build. She's very tall. She's big. I don't see how easily they would have found somebody else, killed her, dragged her, and I mean, it's a little out of.
I think it's one of those things.
You just have to go along
along
with it. Yes.
with it. I mean, you can certainly question it, and that's why we're here. But
But we're gonna let it slide.
yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
That's okay. In the season 6 finale, the detectives revealed that the body found was the same height as Joan and appeared to have been alive when buried. Joan and Brenda were very quick to seek out a homeless woman matching the same physical description. We needed to see this. Same physical description. We needed to see this woman in a flashback. Agreed.
Yes.
I'm sorry if I butchered that. We had planes coming over. We had to stop and start.
Okay.
Anyway, for your first real contribution, I hope you.
It was excellent.
It was great, and that I didn't butcher it.
I have a few other people to read before we move on. Rachel said, I enjoyed the scenes where Joan was playing against herself. I'm no freak fan, but I'm a big fan of Pamela Rabe and her acting abilities. I'm assuming the reason the police were notified by the hospital was that they contacted Kath Maxwell's sister about her condition. When Kath's sister shows up at the hospital, she tells the staff it's not Kath. This also explains how they got Kath's sister's DNA. Anyway, this goes. Joan's got a new murder charge coming. We'll have to go through. Hearing Joan bitch about being charged with killing herself is my eye roll showing. I actually thought something else. I thought that when they dug up the body, maybe Kath Maxwell had a record of her own, and so they knew the DNA was hers. But this explanation makes sense, too.
No, I don't think Kath Maxwell is having a police record kind of gal.
Well, we don't know. She
Yeah.
was homeless. We don't know if she got picked up at some point for some things. But anyway, this is me for a couple of them.
Fine.
Lily says, I'm not convinced by her resurrection story. For once, the police did a bit of a job and identified her with DNA. Well, didn't identify her as the body in the box. And I can get that they won't let this crucial information out while there's still an ongoing investigation to find her. That I'm okay with. But how she got out of the box is still not plausible for me. Okay, she had some help from Murphy, but still. When Will was burying her, we can see that there is a crack in the coffin and that there is already a small amount of ground leaking in the box.
Mm-hmm.
Then, when the coffin is fully covered, how can it resist the pressure of such a quantity of ground knowing that there is already a breach and a leakage? And even if it holds, it won't be for a long time, I guess. So it means that Murphy had to dig faster than lightning. Maybe she was a miner in a previous life. Nay, not convinced by that. We know that the police can actually use DNA identification when necessary, so how the hell didn't they use that to identify the freak at the hospital? I get that there is an effective dramatization to see Vera going to the hospital to identify her, but it's total nonsense. On that I disagree with you, Lily, because DNA tests take a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to just get somebody to identify her.
Exactly.
And anyway, they probably identified her, but they needed something official. Now, David says, so it was Murphy that helped her escape. Whilst entirely obvious, I'm not mad at it, as it's quite literally the only plausible explanation. I think that's the bottom line. That really is the only plausible explanation.
I mean, you don't, my shoulder. You don't agree with this. And then digging her way through the dirt, falling in her mouth.
Although I suspect there is more to be revealed about that night as the season progresses. How interesting that the police have known for quite a while that the body in the box was not Ferguson, and completely realistic that they wouldn't inform Vera, Will, or Jake of this in an ongoing investigation.
I think it's really mean.
I think it makes sense.
No, because she could have snuck up on them from nowhere.
That
I think
is
they
true,
should
though.
have been
That
alerted.
is true.
And,
That
I
is true.
think
At
it
least
might
the
have even
people
helped the
who-
investigation.
I think you're right. At least the people who were in immediate danger from her
Yes.
should have been notified. But, if you haven't seen the fantastic movie, The Many Trials of One Jane Doe, starring the fantastic Wendy Crewson, then you'll know that the police doesn't always do what's in the best interest of people who could be victims, but they do what is better for their investigation. I had never considered that the police might have been onto Joan escaping before now. I had always assumed the DNA results had been lost or tampered with. I can't tell you how great it feels as a Joan fan to see her amongst this ensemble again. And what's more, this doesn't feel like a rehash. They've taken this down an extremely interesting route.
Yes, they have. They've managed to do that.
Listen, on paper, Joan suffering a head trauma and having amnesia sounds like the worst soap cliche around. I read it in the spoilers and thought Pete and Marcia had lost their minds. The execution, however, has been something completely different. I agree.
People have amnesia for a reason, goddammit.
well, we'll see about it. I think
as a soap person,
I think that it's true, though, that they usually take the cliches, the tropes, all those things, and they do manage
turn them
to
on their sides, their backs.
Every so often, they don't. But in many cases, they do.
Listen, when you have to keep a show going, I know this again. I have many references to soaps today, by the way. There are a lot of things. You have to resort to, sometimes, to evil twins coming back from the dead.
But
now, this show doesn't have a daily show. It has to put on for 25 years, but it still has to, it has a limited cast, set mostly in one place. Mm-hmm. And you have to keep things interesting. You can't have people keep trying to shiv each other every other day.
Or fuck each other, because that's what soap do.
Yes. Oh, no, they do a lot more than that.
They have love stories with everything. I mean, it's so incestual by the time you're done, because there's a limited amount of people. And so
I remember Joan Rivers once asked me when I was on her show, do you think Erica Kane will ever sleep with a woman? I said, well, I think she's going to have to, because she's already slept with every man in town. I said, I guess I can keep bringing in a new man every week. I said, but I think actually that
would have made more interesting story.
Yes.
But since you brought up the evil twin bringing in from the dead, I think that what they did here basically is they combined the two without having to actually have either. So she didn't die, and she didn't have a twin.
And she certainly wasn't evil.
But she is back, and they managed to bring her back as somebody different, which is actually, even though the explanation, yes, might be a little...
they used several tropes.
Yes,
but they wound them together in an interesting way. Yeah. Them together,
so that's kind of cool. I was dreading her returning. This is still David.
Sorry, David. I'm sorry that
No. I mean, we're this is our job. We're not here just to read.
We're not news readers.
I was dreading her returning to the prison, but I think they've taken it to such interesting territory. It doesn't feel like a rehash of seasons 4 and 5, which I was scared of. It feels like we're getting a brand new side of Ferguson's character. There are so many tiny little character nuances that make the stakes in this case particularly enthralling. Is she or isn't she truly an amnesiac? Is there a part of her that remembers but she's suppressing it? Do Will, Jake, and Vera believe her? They are 3 people that have nothing to gain from her remembering who she truly is, so how are they going to handle Kath Maxwell? The synapses that are sparking between all the different characters involved are really hooking me in.
I think they're going to try very hard to make her think she thinks
She's Kath Maxwell. But finally, after being comatose for 2 weeks, Lily says this.
Lily's been comatose for nearly 2 weeks? Oh, you didn't tell me that, Lily. I'm so sorry.
That's what you call a dangling
Dangling
participle. I'm so sorry, Lily.
I'm an editor, honey. I had to. So Lily says, totally alert and uncomatose.
Oh, she's so alert. You have to wait till I read her up. You'll see later. I love Lily. Thank you. Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Wentworth and Talking Teal fans, you loved the Freak Show previous seasons? You loved to play this endless game called Is the Freak Alive or Dead? And you were devastated when it all suddenly stopped at the end of season 7 when you saw the Freak alive? Rejoice! Because a new version of the Freak Show awaits, and the writers imagined a brand new, revolutionary, and never seen before game called Is the Freak Faking Amnesia or Not? You will be able to play into the rest of throughout the rest of the season, and if you're lucky enough, even until the end of the show. Yeah, I'm already bored with this shitty idea of amnesia.
So as you like to say, tell us how you really feel, Lily.
And I have to say, yeah, I just said that I agreed, but that I'm willing to go
I love
with
that you
it.
quote yourself. This is.
Oh, yeah, I take notes when I read your things.
So that you quote yourself.
Well, otherwise I'll never remember.
No, I love it. Yes, and I said.
And I said.
This is a fabulous play-by-play. Yes.
I also agreed, but I'm sort of willing to go with it a few episodes because I really loved Pamela Rave, and I want to see her do something else. So I'm not as disappointed with it as long as we've got her. I'd like to see her do something else for a change.
Well, and this is the part where we get to talk about is she or is she not faking it. And here's my...
You mean we get to guess?
Well, no, I'm going to talk about it because I don't want to guess, honestly. This is the part I don't like, the guessing game. I honestly am exhausted with all of the... Is she or... Exactly what Lily said. I'm exhausted with all that.
Said.
I don't need that. But I will tell you what I think because many of you are guessing and we'll read all of those. But I'll tell you my point of view of it, which is completely from a dramatic point of view. It would be so much more interesting if she wasn't faking it. Because we've seen her fake it. We've seen her pretend. We've seen her be the superpower human, blah, blah, blah. We've seen her do all of that. This is an opportunity to do it.
Be nice.
Faking nice.
Faking nice, yes.
This is their opportunity to take Pamela Rabe and to take this character and reinvent it and let us have something completely new.
It's a new character. It's not even taking this character. It's taking Pamela Rabe
and making her Kath Maxwell.
Maxwell.
Exactly. So instead of doing exactly the same thing, which is the freak pretending to be blah blah, which you've seen a million times before, let's see a new version of her. And with your psychological explanations of this, which I'll read in a second, I actually think that this could take us could take her character to actually something that would excite me to see.
Yes, it'll be interesting because people will be responding to her as though she's the freak. And she's not in her head, if she's not. And that could be very distressing for her.
Right, so actually the dynamics, not only in her mind with herself, but her entire relationship.
With everybody else.
Yeah, it could be a whole new thing. And that would be, to me, a justifiable reason to bring her back. So that we can explore and let Pamela Rabe show us what she can do again.
On something else, exactly, instead of doing the same old thing.
But here are some of your theories about whether or not she's faking it. Kathy says, no way does she not remember who Vera, Will, and Jake are. She knows who they are and who she is. So she also knows she's going back to Wentworth. It's all part of her new plan to get revenge on the 3 of them. What she doesn't know is that there is no protection unit anymore and Allie will get her revenge first.
Well, I don't know that she wanted to go back to Wentworth. I think that these people don't live in Wentworth. I think that
it would have been actually easier for her to get to them on the outside. Which she has been planning.
I hate to disagree, but I must.
Why do you hate?
I don't know.
Disagree away.
Okay. I just don't think that. I think that for her, I think she did everything she could. She was going to fly to Rio.
No, but what she means is that now that she knows she's been found, then this is her new plan.
Well,
she
yes,
came up
this
with.
is a plan that she's coming up now that the worst that could have happened. She
Right.
got caught and she's going to be back in prison. But I don't think that was anything that she had planned.
I don't think that's what she's saying.
Okay.
I think that what she's saying is that she's pretending so that because she knows she's going back to Wentworth anyway, so she's pretending so that she would still have the upper hand.
Right, surprising.
Right.
Having no reason, as Kath Maxwell, to want to kill them
Exactly,
or get revenge on them.
they will let their guard down, etc., etc. The obvious, anyway. Rachel?
Rachel says, "Do I buy the idea that Kath has buried Joan? Nah, not really. I think she wants to bury Joan and start a new life, but Wentworth has a way of hearkening back to the past. Kath will never be able to deny the animal within. One of the upcoming episodes is called Goldfinch 2.
Please don't harm any animal or fishies or anything.
Well, we'll see if at the end of it they say no animals were harmed in the making of this program. I think that's when we'll see the Joan we have come to hate come roaring back. In the meantime, she'll be a quiet little mouse on her best behavior for the most part. I also really don't like the writers pushing the idea that if a psychopath gets hit hard enough in the head, they'll turn into a decent person. The same way I felt about Liz's pill.
Again, there are some psychological interpretations here that are very interesting that we'll read. I don't think that a simple, if somebody gets hit on the head, they can completely change their personality or their personality disorder. But there are some possible explanations here that are interesting. All right, Denise said, "It is so fucking obvious that the Ferguson knows exactly who she is, yet her blood pressure," interesting observation, Denise, "yet her blood pressure never went up when she's asked if she knows Vera, Will, or Jake. Here we go again with allowing Joan to get away with everything. The only thing that makes any of this alright is the hope that she will go back to Wentworth and Allie will finally kill her. I hope. There are many freak fans out there, and I get that she has been a very iconic character and Pam Raby is an amazing actress. She plays Joan wonderfully, but the fact that Ferguson can continue on this journey is just too much. I am, however, happy that they were able to explain how Ferguson got out of the box and also the fact that the cops knew she was alive. It makes me feel like they tied up some loose ends." Okay, and Garrett?
Well, Garrett says,
Well, Garrett.
she's faking it. It is possible a person could get released from prison and have their crime overturned if they are suffering from memory loss. Really, I don't think so, but I think you go on to explain something.
Yeah. At least on television,
on
it's
television,
possible.
it's possible. I don't. I think that they're just going to be a very sad person wondering why the hell they're in prison, which we'll see with Joan. Why am I here?
Yeah.
The amnesia storyline happened in Prisoner involving B. Smith, who was about to be acquitted and released after temporarily losing her memory.
So fascinating.
Yes.
See, again, I love how they keep they mix them up. They give storylines to different characters.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
They use some of the past,
Mhm.
but they repurpose it,
Mhm.
which is very interesting.
I love it.
Anyway, she was acquitted. She was to be acquitted and released after temporarily losing her memory, only to regain it again, but decided to fake it. Although it would have meant her friend, an ex-elderly inmate called Mum Brooks, would have been imprisoned instead for harboring an escaped prisoner.
Which reminds me of B getting Liz in trouble when
Yes.
Liz was out. So that's
Making her
another.
get the gun.
Mhm.
So, B being B, had to tell the court she made it all up and threatened her friend Mum if she didn't go along with her. Well, that doesn't sound like the B we knew.
No,
although
but
she did
in order to
Liz.
save her friend.
Mm.
Yeah, in order to save her friend, she had to tell him that she didn't know what she was doing. Yeah.
No, she wanted her to go along with it.
No, she said she told the court that she threatened her friend if she didn't go along with it. So in other words, she didn't harbor a fugitive. Yeah.
I read it. I saw it completely differently. That she threatened.
Anyway,
it doesn't matter. It does. Sorry, Garrett. It's just you bring up so many interesting points that we have to discuss them mid
real time.
reading. Yes. I do, however, think we genuinely will see a different side to Joan when she returns. The fact that she saw evil Governor Joan in the ground whilst she buried Kath Maxwell could be her way of escaping the evil nemesis within, and she could possibly seek redemption. Could Joan have had a multiple personality disorder all along? Again, that was another prisoner storyline. The trauma of the hanging, confined in the box, and the hit on the head in recent times may have finally triggered something within Joan to make her stop being a villain.
Right, so it's interesting you're saying that the multiple personality disorder was a plot in Prisoner, because that some of it relates to the psychological theories that I'll get to in a second, but it's not as simplistic, and obviously we know now that multiple personality disorders is not that simplistic. So we'll talk about that in a second. Before we do, I just want to, unless you have something else.
I just had some notes. I said again that she's a psychopath, and I think as such she loves her power. I mean, I find it hard to think of her
But Joan has always been more
relinquishing
complex.
herself, because I don't trust anything she does. I mean, she might have amnesia now, but I don't think that she's going to have it forever, and then she's going to pretend. So we might have a little of the true amnesia, but I think we're always going to get back to.
But Joan has always
Joan being
been
Joan.
a more complex character than
Yes.
just a psychopath. To
Well,
me,
absolutely, because she has
more-
a little bit of actual feeling for certain people.
But
and
anyway, her psychology is so
It's
complex.
very complex,
So I wouldn't just
both
say
in the writing and in the playing.
Right.
I have to, in the early years of The Freak, Garrett really did make me think about that. She was so layered. She
exactly.
was so
they
fascinating.
flattened her later, but if we
And
go
she'd have
back,
conversations with her father and conversations with herself and
Yeah.
So maybe
this is the character we love.
Yeah, and maybe the multiple personality.
Well,
although maybe it's not that, but she could have some sort of schizophrenia, a certain level.
no,
of it.
people confuse multiple.
No, I don't confuse
Well,
multiple
schizophrenia is
personality
So what do you
disorder
think?
with
Why do you think schizophrenia?
schizophrenia? People hear voices. They,
Oh, so you think she has a?
I mean, she could have any
I don't-
number of disorders.
I don't think she has. I don't think she's schizophrenic, but I think that. Well, I mean, because we don't see her having hallucinations or anything, or
Yes, we do see her having hallucinations. Talking to her father is a hallucination.
But many people talk to people who
But
have.
we see them.
Well, we see them for dramatization purposes, so we see it. I don't think she.
Well-
I don't know. I don't know. You know what? Again, weigh in and let us know what you think. But what I think that she does possibly have a fractured, psyche. But anyway, we'll talk about it in a second. But tell me just what Jane said, and then we'll move on.
Okay, Jane says, I am 100% positive the freak is faking her amnesia. Her entire mental process, flashbacks during the episode, was screaming it loud and clear. Mean Joan slapping it out of victim Joan to not let go. And Mean Joan always wins. The freak is still the freak. She is not faking being Kath Maxwell.
Oh yeah.
No way. She is
Okay.
all Joan, all freak, and she has a plan for Armageddon.
I think she means she is faking being Kath Maxwell.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. That's right. That's
yeah,
why
yeah,
I
I think
circled
I think
not.
she I think that was a mistake. Yeah.
She is faking being Kath Maxwell. Sorry.
And she has a plan for Armageddon.
And she has a plan for Armageddon. If I'm wrong, I will do some sort of interpretive dance video about it at the rap party for all to see. I'm that sure of this. I just want to say, how about if you're right? Can we still have that dance
But this is
video?
another reason for me to want for Jane to be wrong. I would love to see the interpretive dance. And actually, I was thinking that since we don't have perks this year, and we love your creative submissions at the end of the year with the rap party. And yes, we love it when you write and you write and you write and you write, but we love especially the creative submissions, which is, videos and drawings and poems
They're
and songs.
fabulous.
So I was thinking that for the rap party, anybody who submits a creative submission will get into a draw, and we'll raffle out a Talking Teal podcast if that's an incentive to anybody. So start thinking about your creative submissions. Ryan says, we got insight into Joan's mind, which reveals a sort of Gollum from Lord of the Rings with two personalities, and we saw her metaphorically bury Joan. Okay, so that leads me to your theories, and I know that there have been a lot of theories on social media, a lot of discussion about the psychology of Joan, and I've seen a few that have been interesting, but because those people didn't send in their submissions directly to us, I'm not going to quote them. Ryan was kind enough to kind of sum up in a couple of sentences one of them, and then David goes into his own. So Ryan says, Maxwell might represent an alternative self that represses childhood trauma. Governor Joan is perhaps an evil front that protects this trauma. And in order to help further explain this, David says, it was masterful allowing the audience a glimpse into Ferguson's broken psyche because it revealed and hinted at so much untapped backstory. That battle in her mind between villain and victim was so interesting. I read an analysis on Reddit that stated that Joan's true self is a traumatized child. The last thing she wanted to be is a victim, so as not to appear weak in her father's eyes. So her false self, a sociopathic control freak, is a defense mechanism learned in childhood to suppress and deny the vulnerable inner child. This vulnerable inner child is projected onto everyone else, and the need to control and punish them for their weakness and inferiority. Jodie Spiteri comes to mind. Yeah.
That also backs up the idea that she might have associative identity disorder,
right? Which is
because that often, whenever you see, I mean, even in, again, mostly I see them in movies, but the Three Faces of Eve and the one with Sally, the fine nun.
Sally Field.
Sally Field. Sorry. That place in your brain with names where you hold your names is just getting smaller and smaller. It's right about here. Anyway, those were real life stories, and they all stemmed from childhood abuse.
Right. So we know that
finding the protector.
Children, when they experience trauma, sometimes
often sexual abuse or physical abuse.
Right. When they feel powerless and they can't remove themselves from the situation, they remove part of themselves from the situation, and that could lead to dissociative
and they bring in
identity disorder. Right. So that could be an interesting explanation. But the reason I was kind of moving away from this multiple personality disorder is because it's a term that's been used so loosely and with such association of just some sensationalistic kind of a thing that I wanted to go back to it being possibly the result of trauma. Anyway, the vulnerable inner child is projected onto...
Who is this, David?
Still David, yes. Mm-hmm. Is projected onto everyone else, and the need to control and punish them for their weakness and inferiority. Perhaps Joan's affinity for babies is a way to save herself before her essential trauma. The scenes we saw of her mind and her subconscious assimilating memories of her new persona, Kath Maxwell, transposed onto her vulnerable inner child. For the first time, her inner child now has an adult persona, and one that can dissociate from all of the shame. It's very reminiscent of the Gollum, what is it, Smeagol dynamic. I never saw Lord of the Rings. Pamela has said that her motives this season will change. Frankly, quote, frankly, Joan's got something else on her mind. It changes a little bit as we go on down the track. Something else, the scene of Kath Maxwell.
Pamela said that?
Mm-hmm. The scene of Kath Maxwell burying Governor Joan Ferguson that played out in her head was very telling. She obviously believes now she's Kath Maxwell, and this will allow the writers to explore a more vulnerable side of her and allow something not many people have ever felt for Ferguson: sympathy. This is the season of redemption, after all. There are two outcomes here. One, pieces of Joan will emerge periodically until she's fully back to herself. Two, an incident occurs that forces her memory as Joan to come back. I'm leaning more toward two. And again, this is
sort of self-preservation.
This would be ever infinitely more interesting than the usual she's faking it.
Yeah, I just so want her not to be faking it. I so want it to be real. I think it would be fascinating. I think that we could even feel sympathy for her. I think that she would be able to show another, a whole another acting muscles. She'll be able to exercise.
She already did in
that
last scene when she looks at them.
Scene, yes.
And somebody said, we'll be seeing more new expressions of Joan. Yes, finally we see a new expression.
Give her a lie detector test.
Interesting, although she could have mastered.
Yeah, she could have, but still, give her a lie detector test, and maybe that'll give people more reason to believe her, because they're certainly going to think she's faking it.
I want to say that when I saw those flashbacks, and that's why they looked so interesting to me, because they did reveal a lot, and there were two things there that got my attention. Besides the fact, of course, that Kath Maxwell buried Joan, which to me, unless again they're trying to mess with us, which would be a shame.
Yes, that would be infuriating.
Yeah, that would be like the ultimate. Okay, she did bury Joan deep down in her brain, and now she's Kath Maxwell. But the two other things was when she is in the padded room and Joan Ferguson is slapping, the crazy Joan Ferguson around.
My sister, my mother, my sister, my daughter.
Which again shows this inner struggle between two very different selves of Joan, and that she did take on this very controlling persona to keep in line somebody a lot weaker and a lot more disturbed. Which would also explain why she did at some point in the end of season 3, lost it, and so there is that dichotomy inside her. But the other interesting thing is when they chose and this is why I said they chose very meticulously what they brought back.
I'm sure they did.
Right, they brought besides her talking to herself, we only saw her with Vera for a split moment. We saw her doing the fencing, which we know is something that is very, if I remember correctly, harkens back to her father.
Mm-hmm.
We saw her with the goldfish, which unfortunately I don't remember that scene very well from the original when it was originally played, but that obviously will come back if there's an episode called Goldfish too.
She broke the
right,
and just
but
let
what
it
happened?
Flop.
Did she?
She just let it die.
Did she? I don't remember.
Which I don't think she swallowed it.
No,
that's frat
that's a different story.
Yeah.
And the last thing is that they chose to show her saying to that psychiatrist, "You fucked the wrong lunatic."
I love that.
And I think that's very important. You fucked the wrong lunatic, which also shows possibly sexual abuse in her past. Besides that,
that was possibly one of my favorite lines of the entire series.
Yeah, definitely of her highlight reel. Okay, so where are we?
We are on Lily, I think, or are you?
No, but before we go to Lily, we are moving on to the next story, and this could go so many different places. But I think that what they really did this episode is weave a very tight web of connecting all these chess pieces, as David put it. But when I thought about what's in the center of connecting them all, it's this new storyline about ending the protection unit. And let's talk about that. First of all, we have a very interesting entry from Ryan, who explains to us a little bit more about the protection unit.
Ryan says, the obvious reasons for why protection inmates are so hated is because of the nature of their crimes they have committed involving children. Carrie Tucker was a prison inmate and was a consultant for the first series of Wentworth. Some of the B. Smith storyline in season 1 were based on her prison diaries.
Fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I love all this information about people.
In one interview, Carrie Tucker mentioned that prisons usually have a protection unit where laggers usually end up, and a protection from protection unit for child killers and abusers because usually they are not safe from anyone, even laggers. In one interview, Tucker made an interesting point. One of the reasons why the general population inmates hate the protection unit inmates is because they see themselves as the victims of these women. A large portion of all inmates are survivors themselves, and so they perhaps see their own perpetrators in the protection unit. And interestingly, male pedophiles are also targets in prison,
right?
Which points also to a lot of child abuse.
Yes, and I never even thought about that. I just thought that that's considered like the lowest of the low to harm children. It never dawned on me that actually it's because
might be a reflection that they want to
because. A lot of people who end up in prison are people who suffered abuse themselves. And thank you, Ryan. That was a very excellent point.
Interesting.
David says, what I love about Marcia and Pete's work as writers is just when you think you've covered all there is to cover in prison, they tap into a reservoir of story potential. We've never seen so much of the protected unit. Mixing them with the general population adds so much jeopardy and raises the stakes even higher. These are inmates that even the women look down their noses at. Murderers and rapists and baby killers. I want to talk more about the protection unit, but before we move on from Ferguson, I want to talk about how ending the protection unit could possibly affect Ferguson's storyline specifically. And David has a prediction because both David and Garrett had a very interesting thought process here. And so David says, prediction! The merging of protected prisoners into general population is one that will have dire consequences. There is a daycare in the prison now, and some of these women are baby killers. There will be an incident in the finale where Grace is in danger thanks to Anne's budget cuts, and Kath/Joan will come to the rescue. This will earn her favor with Vera, who may start to believe she has changed irrevocably. Although I want to stop here and say, actually, Joan saving babies is a hallmark of Joan. She does love babies, so I don't know that will mean that she's changed.
Or on the other hand, she tries to let them burn up.
No, she saved the baby from the fire. The final, however, Kath will be injured in the incident and Joan will start to emerge again. The final shot of the season will be in Joan's head, and it will be the black-gloved hand punching through the shallow grave that Kath buried her in, all ready to cause fucking chaos in season 9.
Maybe she was a twin and her twin died.
What?
That's another good cliche.
No.
Okay.
Garrett says, I have to say, with all those kitty kitty killers from protection being released into general and with the daycare creche so nearby, I'm a little relieved Joan will be around as she has shown a soft side toward babies in the past. Oh, that daycare creche with baby Grace in it was really starting to become more apparent. I've been wondering, is it just for the use of the staff who put their young children in it while at work, or is it shared with the women who have given birth while serving a sentence and have their child with them? Well, certainly we never saw it when Doreen had a baby.
No, there was no.
I find it hard to believe that they would mix the two. I don't know. I don't.
First of all, every time I see Grace, my heart stops. She's so precious, and I just know that if it isn't Joan, it's going to be something. That baby is there to
but you can
give
also
us
know
agita.
But you can also be certain that nothing will happen to her. They will
I
never
guess
do
so.
anything really harmful to baby Grace. Now, if there were a dog or a kitten, I would be extremely concerned. But a baby, I think, is off limits even in Wentworth, and especially Vera's baby. Right. Okay, so now let's talk about the person who is actually moving all the central pieces, Anne. Unfortunately, because I don't like to talk about Anne. And let's start with Lily.
Lily says, have you noticed the budget cuts are the new security cameras? If you needed a facilitator for the storyline before, you had the security camera covered with something or just moved with a broom and then the action could take place. Now, you need a quick hunger strike, blame it on the bad food because of budget cuts. You need to put Mari back in general, blame it on the closure of the protection unit because of budget cuts. You need an ally behind bars other than the official top dog, suppress the supply of testosterone because of budget cuts.
Did you say budget cuts?
Budget cuts.
Ah, budget cuts. It's actually from budget cuts.
Starting to sound like a bird.
Budget cuts.
There's a budget cut. And then blackmail someone and guarantee her the arrival of testosterone for her boyfriend. That one's quite original, though.
Very original.
Yeah. It really annoys me that the writers use this shitty excuse so they can do whatever they want with the storyline. I'm sure there were always some budget problems, so why focus on that now? Well, you answered your own question.
Exactly.
Maybe because they can't use the security cameras as an excuse anymore.
Budget cut sounds better than security camera. Budget cuts.
As an excuse anymore, as they updated some of them, just some of them. I can't find the exact moment again, but you can see some new cameras in a corridor. Yes, but they still have, we noticed, some of those old clunky, stupid ones.
Maybe they're phasing it out. They're phasing them out like the
because
hoodies.
they're cheaper. Yeah. As you noticed it very well last week, teal is the new black. I like that she did teal is the new black.
Yeah,
instead of
orange is the new, or teal is the new oranges. Yeah.
The budget story was a huge storyline in some bad seasons of Orange is the New Black. And to see the writers use it really bothered and even enraged me.
Oh.
Wentworth is so much better than this boring, repetitive, and totally uninteresting story.
What do you have to say about that? Well, what did you have to say?
What did I have to say?
Can you understand your own writing? Not really?
No. Oh, yeah. No. I was
This
just
is
going to say
highly
no one wants to go to a prison that doesn't have a protective unit. But
well, and let's talk about that for a second. Kathy says, and ending protection. By the way, how is this legal? Even prisoners who have committed the most heinous crimes have a right to be protected. At least that's how it is in America, but I'm sure Australia is the same. And Rachel says, and Rachel knows a thing or two because she's seen a thing or two about the prisons.
She hasn't been in prison.
Not because she's
Please
been
let us
in
clarify that. Because she's worked in law enforcement.
And makes the decision to close the protection unit to cut staff and save money.
Outrageous.
This is another one of those instances that would never happen in real life. Protection units are one of the most necessary tools in correction work. Crimes against children are especially provocative amongst female inmates. Most of them endured abuse themselves as a child, and they do not tolerate those who hurt children in general population. This is one of those times I just have to let it go. And I'm trying. So, yeah,
let's give them shit for food. That, okay, it's been done. But let's close the protection unit.
And for Vera and Will to just say, hey, why didn't you at least give us enough of a warning? Excuse me, this is not a case of why didn't you at least give us enough of a warning. This is a case of I'm going to go to the whoever is above you and tell them that this is not, you can't do that in a prison. You just can't. I'm sorry. I think that it's complete. I call BS on this, and I do think that it is a complete plot device to help facilitate all these things. So if you've heard us talking about the cameras all along and bitching about those, let's have the cameras back.
We have some of the cameras back, and I'm betting they will. They'll still be used.
They'll still be played. Yeah. Jane asks,
"Is Anne the new Joan?"
She's certainly not as interesting as Joan was in those first few seasons.
Anne. That's me.
That's you, not Joan. Although it could be Jane.
Jane might hate her.
Yeah.
I think she doesn't like her. There does not seem to be 1 ounce of good in her. She is a troublemaker at best and a psychopath at worst. Obviously, there is something pathologically wrong with that chick. Is it purely driven by money? She keeps mentioning this presentation she has to give to the Board of Governors or some board. The catalyst... Oh, I said it. Mm-hmm. Some board.
Yeah.
The catalyst for the upcoming chaos is Anne. Is she the new Joan of the administrative world? Everything she is putting in place is a catalyst for so many other bad things. Closing the protection unit, trying to get Lou to be a co-top dog or not so co, but start a gang war. This is not going to be good. Some kind of violent event is coming to the prison. Anne's relationship with Cockburn. How do you pronounce that?
Cockburn, as it turns out.
She says, "Say it, Leroy."
Yes. She really wanted me to.
If
you do the interpretive dance, I will say
it. Anne's relationship with Cockburn, say it, Leroy, which has to relate to Judy, is also not clear to me. But it's there.
Right. And we'll get to Judy in a second.
Yeah, and I think you're right.
Yes, well, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Garrett says, I don't think she has any connections with Joan. I'm sure they will definitely have a lot of screen time together when they meet, which will be interesting. But I have a feeling Anne is going to try to destroy Vera in some way or another. When she said to Vera she's been out in the real world while Vera has been in a bubble with her career, those are not the type of words of a true friend that respects you would say. The jury was still out on her until that point. That is it. I hate her. How dare she say that to Vera? She clearly has no respect for Vera. So far, she has underestimated Vera, which is understandable if they knew each other from the past, and Vera was that timid, suppressed girl living at home with her mother. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be surprised if Anne seduces Jake. I wouldn't be either.
Me neither.
It will be interesting to see. But Anne better be careful. She has no real idea just who Vera is today.
Yeah, but she's so nice to Vera, and she loves her, and she seems to want her so much.
Want her?
No, want her back in the prison. She seems to have really felt...
Her?
No, I don't mean want her. Although that would have been an interesting twist.
No. Well, if she wanted her, but I wouldn't want anything to
No.
Yeah. I think she's being nice to her because she thinks that's the way to win Vera, because from her previous knowledge of Vera is this very sweet, good person.
But I think that she's already starting to understand that she's not that malleable. She's doing some things.
Why should she? Vera just said, well, I guess we should just given us a fair warning. They're not. It's not a zoo. Yes, they're not animals. But does she do anything about it?
Well, she doesn't know about the phone call.
Right. So that I did like. Well, we'll talk about Vera in a second. But before we do, David. Let's put on our David hat.
Yes. Anne is quickly ascending the ranks to be one of my favorite characters this season.
Typical David.
David, you're just like the bad guys.
I guess he does.
She is just so ruthless. If she wants something, she just makes it happen, with no thought to any of the prisoners' safety. This decision to close the protection unit, I feel, will come back and haunt her in a horrifying fashion towards the end of the season.
Oh, I sure hope so.
I hope so.
I hope one of those kitty killers ends up being an Anne killer.
Yeah.
But, or at least tries and
none
really
of them are cannibals, are they?
Oh, God. I don't know if I hate her that much. But you know, she says, we are a team here. And then she tells Vera that she's planned to do it all along. So
yeah, you're not a team.
There's no Anne
and she's
team.
queen.
Lauren says,
somehow Anne is acting like she is the governor of Wentworth. I keep saying that.
Yes.
Closing the protection unit, firing officers, and now also offering Lou a top dog role to protect the A-class prisoners that bring in more money. I like that Vera said that the prison was not a zoo and the women are not animals. Anne made her position clear, though. Quite Joan-esque how she stated they deserved their fate. Also, her conversation with Lou reminded me very much of how Joan also maneuvered Bea into opposition with Frankie. Anne is pitching Lou against Allie and trying to control the inner politics of the yard and control Lou.
If I may just say, big mistake. Big.
Huge.
She thinks she's smarter than everybody else, but guess what? She's not.
See how many movie references Keith came up with. How come I wonder if you've been ticking them off as you go along. Anne was shrewd enough to see that Lou, even being a rebel, desperately wants to help Rebel. I dislike Anne's character a lot, which is unfortunate as I really like the actress. Yes, she was quite good. By the way, Anne very clearly had 2 pictures of a young lady on her desk.
Yes.
Possibly her daughter. And if so, her daughter is a teen, a young woman in these photos. Maybe she lost this child, the one alluded to in the conversation with Vera a couple of episodes back.
I completely missed those pictures. Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah, me too.
I went back and I took a snapshot of that so we can see them.
Well, I'll have to look at them. Yes. Well, we're pretty sure she lost some child.
Well, somebody here later on, I will reveal, has given us an interesting bit of information. And I think you know who you are. I will get to you in a second. So, before we go on to talking about the 3 amigos, Diana says, I thought it was really telling when Vera and Anne were debating the purpose of prison, and Anne said, in the real world, where the public wants the criminals pay for their crimes, that sounded like any number of callers on Australian talkback radio. So, see, this is another insight from an Aussie.
About the right wing.
So it's interesting because we don't listen to, thank goodness, to any talkback radio, Australian, American, or otherwise.
My head would explode.
So thank you for that, because it sounds like that's a real world discussion that is going on. So that again, it lends it more credibility and validity in the real world. Not that the ending of the protection unit has any validity in my eyes, but at least the mindset it's interesting to note that it's commonplace. Okay, talking about the 3 amigos, Diana says,
I am loving this series. I want Vera Bennett as my life coach. Yes, I want her as one of my best friends. I have no problem believing that Vera and Jake have become stronger, better versions of their former selves. Parenthood does impact people that way, some people. Yes. I've always found Will's...
Just ask Boomer's mother. It didn't impact her that way.
It sure did. I've always found Will's character annoying, but I do like the 3-way. Ooh. Jake would like that. 3 amigos. I do like the 3-way 3 amigos thing with Vera and Jake. They do need to band together against Anne. So I
hope they do. Yeah. Meanwhile, they're so busy with Ferguson, they're completely letting Anne run the prison amok.
Yes, they barely bat an eyelash.
Yeah. Garrett says, as for Vera, Will, and Jake, all that went through my mind whilst they talked about the latest Joan revelations was they really should be more careful. It wouldn't surprise me if Anne Reynolds has every single room in that prison bugged in order to listen into everyone's conversations, just like Joan did with Bridget having sessions with Frankie. Didn't think about that, but that's a good point. But I don't think she's
a control freak.
I don't think she knows about the Joan thing. I think she would have known by that. Hopefully they would have shown us.
I think Joan's going to get her.
I hope so. That would be really nice. And poetic justice. Speaking of, we'll start with Vera. I loved the angle and the music that they use when they tell her that the freak is alive. And again, I want to mention the music. The music this season is really been good this season. Okay, let's start with Rachel's opinion on Vera.
Okay. Atco deserves a Logie for this episode. She ran the emotional roller coaster and never broke a sweat. Vera proved to us in this episode that she is now a lioness. She's no longer allowing fears or insecurities to run her life. She stands up and is willing to take what may or may not be coming. She puts Jake in his place when he wants to run, but she also shows true affection for his role as a father to their child. She shows compassion to Judy with the phone call, along with the willingness to defy Anne's orders. I thought the moment that best depicted Vera's growth was when she told Jake to go home, shut the door, and leaned on it for a moment, and then walked away without flipping the deadbolt. I think the deadbolt might have been
it would have been a good idea.
Just, you know.
Just to be safe.
Yeah, nobody's coming after us in New York, but we always flip the deadbolt. Anyway, the old Vera would have been scurrying around. She would have been a nervous wreck. The siege and motherhood have strengthened Vera and made me really happy to see this. She will now be more than a worthy foil for Joan. No, Joan, you really didn't recognize Vera. At least that part was believable.
I love that. That was so great.
I love Vera more than ever.
Vera and Eva, is that an anagram?
No.
Eva.
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 As in ever, but
I know.
Eva.
Garrett says, we really have seen Vera get stronger and more assertive over time. A far cry from that timid, nervous, suppressed girl worn down by her mother way back in season 1. But I have a feeling we have seen nothing yet. When that protective mother Lioness Tigress, comes out in her, there will be no stopping just how tough she will become.
Tigress, you mean.
Tigress?
Oh, yeah.
Tigress. All right. Is there no world in which Tigress is a pronunciation that's worthy? No. Okay, well.
You know, I only correct you when I think it makes a difference.
I don't speak the language.
You do speak in the language. You speak in the
I
language.
wasn't making fun of anybody. I'm a foreigner. I'm making fun of myself.
No, anyway.
Just to make sure you all got it right.
Your English is perfect, so.
Thank you. Practically perfect in every way.
Pronunciation is just slightly.
That's another movie reference.
Now we'll get tempting saying, I call it a tigress.
We did not have any alcohol before this.
No, I know. Isn't it funny?
Yes.
We're acting as
David.
It's true. I don't drink, and neither do you. So.
No.
So David said, Vera showed true strength in not bowing to Jake's pressure to run away. Make no mistake, Vera is wearing the trousers in this situation. Kate has said that Ferguson is not going to be Ferguson. You think she is?
Yes, she's not going to be, she's not, Ferguson is not going to be Ferguson, the one that we expected.
We're talking about Atco here?
No, yes, Kate Atkinson.
So it must have been at some sort of maybe...
no,
okay. Kate has said that Ferguson is not going to be the Ferguson you think she is going to be, and Vera is not going to be the Vera you think she is going to be. Wow. Mm-hmm. Okay. Thanks for that, Kate. And thanks for sharing it, David. The way they respond to one another has always been about crossing moral lines. And Vera has always been morally ambiguous.
It is true.
It's true. She's done some been morally ambiguous.
Yes,
but the morally the bad things she does she's done, I think, are all justifiable.
Most of the time. But she can cross lines when she needs to.
Yes, she can, and she does, and she has. With Joan suffering amnesia and now vulnerable and afraid under her Kath Maxwell persona, I can see Vera using this to her advantage. She will wield this new power with glee.
And I will be gleeful to see it. Okay. And yes, and I think that the fact that we saw Vera in Joan's mind processes does tell a lot about what will happen between the two of them in the season. I'm looking forward to seeing a new dynamic.
Yes, indeed.
Now, let's talk about Jake.
Well, remember, Vera did save Joan's life. I mean, they have had some very intimate...
I think that their relationship is always fascinating me because it was never just enemies or just a mentor-mentee. There were always underlying, I think...
there were some great...
Especially when you throw in Vera's mother and mother-like, characters.
Well, and also Joan sort of always threatening her with the fact that Vera gave her mother that hotshot. I mean,
which was the only hotshot in the entire season
that anyone was able to push the plunger.
Which brings me to Lily and my favorite comment of the week.
Okay, good.
Lily, haven't they learned anything in the last few seasons? Trying to kill someone with a hotshot will never, ever work. No matter who, when, where, and with what, it will not work. I'm sorry I will comment on small details, but it is inevitable for me as soon as there is a medical environment, professional defamation obliged. Why do they need such a large supply of propofol? It is the prison infirmary, not a major surgical center.
Hilarious.
I work in an emergency department, and we don't keep such a quantity of propofol. I can be okay with it if it's for the needs of the storyline, but then if you really want to kill someone, you don't just take one vial, or at least you administer the whole damn vial, because you won't kill anyone with the amount of drug that Jake tried to administer to the freak. And here is the quick dosage calculation. Bear with us. This is what I live for. Jake took a 20 milliliter vial containing 200 milligrams of propofol, which means the dosage per milliliter is 10 milligrams of propofol. He uses what looks like an insulin syringe, which can usually contain 1 milliliter of liquid medication, which means that in this case he would only administer 10 milligrams of propofol. In anesthesia, the average dosage for induction, meaning to put someone to sleep before an operation, is 2 milligrams per kilogram. That means that for an average adult of 75 kilograms, you'll need around 150 milligrams of propofol to get him or her to fall asleep.
You need even more for Joan.
Well, 75 kilos is, I would say, a good amount. So with his poor 10 milligram propofol syringe, Jake will not succeed in making the freak yawn, let alone kill him.
Brilliant.
And by the way, you won't ever let an unconscious intubated patient unattended alone behind curtains, even if she is monitored. Thank you. Mic drop, Lily. I love it when our smart people who actually know a thing or two about a thing or two have a thing to say. Okay, now that I got that off my chest, let's go to Karen.
The one redeemable character so far is Jake, and the way he is so protective of Vera and baby Grace. For me, it began when he wanted to change places with Vera during the siege at the end of last season. Jake would do anything for Vera and Grace, even murder Joan again. I would hate anything to happen to this adorable family, whether Jake and Vera are together or not.
Although I have to say, there was a moment there when I laughed a little bit because when Will said, "Well, you know, this we will take the blame on ourselves. Of course, Vera cannot be involved in this," and Jake was like, "Oh, well, of course, it's the right thing to do." And I was like, I could see the wheels, and I was like, oh, shit. So, it's the right thing to do. He's really trying to be this other person, but I think he still has a lot of his old self in there. Robin says, Jake, as always, is a paranoid freakazoid. His first instinct is always to panic and make rash decisions. If I were Joan, he would be the first on my list, and he did that to himself. Lauren says,
I don't know if he's a freakazoid, but he is pretty panic-stricken all the time. Lauren says, I must say I was so disappointed seeing Jake do the dodgy and get drugs from medical until I saw him try to shoot up Joan's IV. Yay for that. Of course it fails, like every other hotshot anyone tries on Joan Ferguson. Push the
plunger, people.
Don't just hold it.
Don't wait.
A count of 10 and then push the plunger.
Although, how amazingly surreptitious that she just woke up in that moment. Surreptitious? Is that the word? Serendipitous.
Serendipitous, yes.
Yes.
Of course it fails, like every other hotshot anyone tries on Joan Ferguson. Good on him, though, admitting to Vera that he did it, not being sneaky anymore.
Yes, and I love that he said, I did it for Grace, for you. Well, I did it for myself. I like that he admitted that.
I must admit Jake has won me over. He better not sink low again or I will be mad that I forgave him. I'm not the most important person in my world was a nice moment. Hearing Vera say Grace was lucky to have him as a dad and seeing Jake's determination to protect his daughter. He is firmly on the side of Vera and Will in this whole mess.
Yes.
Whole damn mess.
Rachel says, I do believe Jake loves his daughter and wants to protect both Grace and Vera. I also believe Jake is a coward and always will be. His first impulse was to kill Joan, but his timing really sucked. Was anybody surprised that's exactly when she opened her eyes? I sure wasn't. His next impulse is to grab Vera and Grace and run. Again, a coward. When Joan does come back to herself, I think Jake's in for a ball twisting.
Ow.
Out of the
I don't even have balls that hurts.
Out of the three, Will, Jake, and Vera, Jake is the weakest and most cowardly. Will's not a coward, he's just stupid. Joan knows this. I'm betting Jake tries to kill Joan again once or twice before she gets to bite him back. And David?
We saw sparks of Jake's weak side again this week. Whilst I'm loving his redemption arc, it's nice to see the writers
just took you right into that
have forgot the foundations of his character. No, I can only do British or Cockney. And I can do a little
do the whole
Irish.
Thing in Cockney. I'd love that.
He's one of the first to panic. No. Rather than feist the music, he tries once again to get rid of Joe.
I just want to make sure you know I'm not referencing the movie. I'm referencing the play with Julie in it because she should have been in the movie. Go ahead.
Nevertheless, now we told you a reference.
Even so,
That's
another.
That's a TV reference. Okay, I'm going to go right back and give David another little reading here.
Sorry.
He is the first one to panic. Rather than face the music, he tries to once again get rid of Joan. When that fails, his first instinct is to run.
I don't blame him, though, by the way.
I would have, no.
Don't.
But then, faced with the consequences, his loyalty to Vera and Grace wins out, and he is ready to do the right thing and protect them both. Jake is a great contradiction between fight and flight.
I love that. That's brilliant.
Very brilliant, David.
He seems to keep going between them. Fight, flight, fight, flight. Oh, what am I doing? Okay.
My sister, my
mother.
No, it's my sister, my daughter, my sister.
Oh,
my
right,
daughter,
right.
My sister, my daughter.
So, the third amigo is Will, and the biggest thing I think this episode was when the detective tells him if the guy had balls or brains, he would have killed her first. Ouch. And Will felt it. By the way...
And it's true.
Yep. Rachel has an interesting tidbit. Here's my little trivia nugget for the week. Detective Collins is played by Ian Bliss, who is married to Jackie Brennan.
Wow!
Smiles. Yes, she posted that it was in her contract that he get a tiny trailer.
That's very funny.
Yes.
So he's Mr. Smiles.
He's Mr. Smiles. Yeah.
He doesn't look like Mr. Smiles.
Okay, Lauren says, so Will is off the hook, not a murderer. No reason to pity himself any longer. But God is he's Anne's whipping boy, isn't he?
Talking about balls, I always have envision it's just something from Nevada Smith that makes me think about an old
I'm so curious to know where this is going.
I always just imagine that Anne has a little leather sack on a lanyard or something with Will's balls in them. Because that's the way.
When I hear balls, I think, oh, I miss Craig Ferguson so much.
I thought when you hear balls, you were going to say you miss matzo balls.
No, that's not what I think about when I think balls. It's pretty much, see, now you made me say it again. What is going on?
We've got the giggles today, I'm afraid. We've got some sillies running through our blood.
Let's just go to David.
Okay. David says, Will had not nearly as interesting a reaction to Ferguson being alive. This man believes he murdered her, and yet we see little to no reaction at the news that he's off the hook. There were a couple of lines with Vera, but that was it. I think it could have gone much further. Will's gone from amazing to infuriating to, worst of all this season, uninteresting.
Oy.
His character feels like it's running out of steam. He's probably the least interesting character left in the game.
Oy.
Yeah, he is like kind of a eunuch. He really is.
They might go somewhere, but meanwhile
because he's been our hero for so long.
Meanwhile, he has really been completely... yeah. Well, and not doing his job, even though he's all for the women and he's going to make it right.
and he's the governor. And he never argues with Anne. She says, no, no testosterone.
Right.
It's not, not.
But
it's all right.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about smiles. That doesn't make me smile these days.
Is aching.
We don't have copyrights. Some key issues with Smiles. First of all, she says it wasn't just prisoners in the siege, which we've been saying all along. She's finally voicing a little bit of the reason why she is the Smiles she is this season. When Anne says something along the lines of listening ears, put on your listening ears, I think she feels she is a deputy governor still, but she is being looked down on by Anne, and she's feeling left out by her three amigos.
Yes. She sort of hovers nearby, hoping to be included.
I guess I didn't get the memo. And
Yeah.
when Anne has her bring Lou into the office and says you can close the door now, Smiles actually seems disappointed.
And she's just being treated
you have
like
secrets from
she's
me?
being treated like an everyday screw,
Yeah.
not the co-governor. Of course, the governor is basically behaves like an everyday screw too.
But she's been through a lot, and she's earned her place in a higher, more elevated place in the prison.
She makes me a little anxious this season.
She makes me very anxious, and she was extremely badass, bordering on scary in that lunchroom when they were trying to beat Mari, and she, stopped them in their tracks. And she was, using her, what do you call it?
Her stick.
Yeah. But she did protect Mary,
yes.
which was
noble.
It's her job, right? She didn't have to. She could have stayed on the sideline and let them do a little more to her before intervening. And also Rachel points out
Linda is tapped into the grapevine. She seems to have heard Ferguson was alive almost as soon as Will and Vera found out.
Yeah, well, if her husband is a detective, I might just add.
Well, that's. Oh, you're confusing me. No fair. I'm old. Come on. Have some.
You heard it here. May's old.
Have some respect for the senior citizens' moments of senior moments. There were two other Miles moments that worried me. When Vera states to Anne that closing the protection unit will result in the staff being in danger.
And so, then she said something.
Miles appeared.
But then also something like Anne says something, but it's not going to be senior staff. Oh, so senior staff can be protected, but the rest of them can
drop dead.
Yeah.
Also, when Vera stated to Will that Ferguson might never wake up, again, Linda appears. I know that both times it was to move things on to the next scene, but I can't help but think there's a bit of foreshadowing here. Linda may really be in danger this season, or, I'm saying, really be dangerous. So I think that there will be either end of this spectrum. I think that she could be in danger, but I think she could also.
Who knows who am I being? Interesting. You don't know. It's a Simpsons reference.
Oh. Actually, it's a Simpsons reference on something else that I can't remember.
What?
I
don't get that at all.
The thing is that interesting comes from something else. I can't remember what. The Simpsons stole it.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that is
so
news
if you
to
know
me.
what the original interesting comes from, please tell us.
Okay. This is so much is going on today. Robin is saying that she for sure is headed towards a meltdown. Smiles.
Interesting.
And Diana is asking, and may I say, good question. How has nobody noticed yet that something is up with Linda in her circle? Nobody cares about Linda this season. Nobody's seeing that she's in obvious distress.
Has anyone ever cared about Linda?
Well, I would hope that by now, after all these years, that they've worked side by side, and I would hope.
I think that Linda has always been on the outside, and I think that
That's
part
sad.
of the reason that happened was her own doing, because she was taking so many bribes, and I think maybe she, felt a little apart from the rest of them, and also they just really do seem to think she's chopped liver.
Well, maybe they have heard that she didn't even make the front credits, and so they thought, she's not even an important character. So Ryan says, perhaps season 8 will be a darker Smiles. Reminder, Frankie Doyle changed for the worse in season 2 pre-Bridget. Boomer was also a cruel antagonist in season 2. Will was evil post-burying Ferguson in season 7. And Vera was evil in season 2 and parts of 3. If this is Smiles' turn, bring it on.
Yeah, she'll be great. Jackie's a wonderful actress.
Give her more to do.
Love her.
Thank you.
They are giving her more to do.
A line here and a line there. I need a story.
I think that there will be more.
I hope.
Yeah.
Okay.
My turn?
No, time to talk. Judy's turn. It's
Sorry,
Judy's
Judy.
turn. First off, I think from the question from last episode, why has she switched to Teal so early on? And I think, just my theory, that she's kind of wearing it like a badge of honor. She landed. Oftentimes, activists, just look at Jane Fonda and how many times she's been hauled off to prison. Oftentimes, activists do kind of wear it as a badge of honor that they've been imprisoned for their activism, for their anti-government demonstrations and all that. So I think she did kind of maybe wear, like, again, in her mind, in her privileged mind, thinking that it was going to be a short stint because she was going to be, out in a minute with her dad's lawyers and all that stuff. Wrong. Big mistake. Huge. They're definitely trying to integrate Judy into the very tiny family we have left, as she teaches the family about oppression and revolutions literally as they are braiding each other's hair. And those were those were a few very nice light moments with trying to teach Boomer about the different types of oppression. I also really love that she is like, who's Mary? Who's Ferguson? She's like, totally.
I enjoyed that scene. That was kind of like an old-time scene, back to the early days of family.
I love that Vera showed her some compassion. Again, pointing out that she's just a kid.
Yep.
I'm very curious about the "you're lactating" comment.
That has happened a couple of times.
No, just once.
No,
Judy commented on Vera lactating.
Yes, but someone noticed it.
No.
I don't, oh, maybe it was
Maybe a different show.
Maybe a different show.
But because I don't know if it was just was meant to be funny or was meant to immediately kind of have a closeness between them, saying that it's an intimate thing to observe.
Or was to embarrass.
Or to embarrass, or to put Judy in a slightly different power dynamics with Vera right off the bat. Or...
because Vera looked uncomfortable.
Yes, well, who wouldn't? So, she's...
Well, I'm nursing. Of course I'm lactating. That's what I would have said.
Or, of course, that immediately says, oh, she's cute. She has a picture of Grace on the desk. Is it meant to show us Judy now knows about the baby? Is that somehow going to play?
I wouldn't worry about Judy and the baby.
I don't know who to worry about anymore.
I wouldn't worry about Judy and the baby.
Well, David
I don't
says...
think she's evil, although who knows?
David says, I don't think she's evil, but who knows how that might come into play. David says, once again, poor Vera allows her good heart to be taken advantage of. I hope her judgment of Judy isn't misplaced. Now,
others saying things like that.
So,
it's David Mosley.
David Mosley. Yes, David is so funny. He loves all the bad guys, but he's suspicious of Judy, who I actually am not suspicious of. But here's an interesting thing, because this is, again, one of those cases where I think you all must have read some sort of a spoiler out there, because you're all saying the same thing, and I never even would think about it. So I think that it had to have come from somewhere.
Yeah, because we didn't think of it, so obviously it came from somewhere.
No, because it's a very specific thing that I never saw coming, and if enough of you are saying it, that means it was somewhere around. Right. Correct me if I'm wrong. So Garrett says, and he starts actually by asking a question, did Judy say her lawyers were the guys who got OJ off? That was a joke, right? Yes, it was a joke. She meant like her dad would get her
that type of those caliber.
Anyway, something very strange about that conversation she had.
Idea.
I know, right? Very strange about that conversation she had with her father on the phone. It was like they were talking in code. I'd like to think Judy is innocent and she's being set up, but so far I have trouble trusting her.
Who says that?
This is Garrett. And now...
we have two.
Yes, Kathy.
Okay, Judy's story is becoming more interesting. I'm kind of leaning toward the side that she is not a traitor, but more of a whistleblower. Me too.
Yeah.
Her father knows exactly what she's doing, and that whole phone call to him was all in code. They both know that she is being listened to. She just didn't seem too upset when he hung up on her. She's got government information, and that's why they are really going after her the way they would treat a terrorist.
And Jane says, was this call set up with code, with her dad calling her Peanut after calling her a terrorist?
We missed something.
There has to be more to this. Well, again, this is why I think there's something out there in the ether or social media or something where they're talking about
David says
David.
that phone call to Daddy was more than she was letting on. Did the word lawyers not feel like a coded message? Maybe it was just the way the line was delivered, but I really felt like Judy was after some information, but Daddy wasn't playing ball. This whole prison.
What is when you're saying Daddy? What is it?
Daddy.
Oh, is it Who Killed Baby Jane or
Daddy?
Daddy.
I'm sending a letter to Daddy. His address is heaven above. I think you'll be able to come up with that reference. We really are.
I know. It's on a roll today, yeah.
The whole prison gig, says David, is so beneath her. She isn't interested in prison politics. She's interested in how she can use these women to further her cause. She uses empathy as a weapon to get what she wants. With Allie and later with Vera, she is able to switch between the fierce leader side of her and the innocent, persecuted side at the drop of a hat to navigate her circumstances. She's extremely manipulative, and I feel there is more to her relationship with Anne that meets the eye. That is a very interesting thought. I think we've seen the real Judy yet, and I don't know about the Anne thing, but...
Well, let me drive it home for you, okay?
Thank you, yes.
This is that interesting bit of information that David provides that just is fabulous. Again, I love that you
take that away.
Yes, because I wanted it to be a surprise. I wanted you to read it. David says, there was an audition tape on Dailymotion for Anne, and the actress read out parts of the script. One scene was the Vera night out scene, and another was her... Shut up!
Blue Jays don't listen.
And another was her discussing her child's death. They may have changed it because the scripts weren't as what they were when they were aired, but it seems as though she had a daughter called Charlie who was killed in a terrorist attack in a tube station in London while they were going to a concert. Maybe Judy was involved. Maybe it was one of those eco-terrorists or something. Maybe Judy was involved, or maybe Anne just thinks she was involved. Or maybe Anne just sees the word terrorist and wrongly assuming that because Judy is capable of something similar. We know how fatalistic Anne is in her judgments. That is so
interesting.
Right?
Very. I mean, my ear, now I can't wait to see. I want this story to unfold.
Because I never thought of Judy as somebody who could cause harm again. You know, they make a point of saying she's a vegan. You know, she's all about what seemed up until now to me as just being peacefully resistant. But if she belonged, even maybe when she was younger and not as, smart, if she belonged to an eco-terrorist group, or, if something went horribly wrong.
Radicals often
sometimes
change their
maybe
their
because people were
radicalization.
Maybe because people were hurt, she changed how she does things, or I don't know. Or again, it could be that Anne just sees somebody like that and immediately associates them with those kind of people, and just if she's very conservative, then those people do tend to think in generalized terms of all people, all activists are terrorists. So interesting. This has got a lot more interesting. Yes. All right. Finally, let's talk. Not finally, we have more to go, but let's talk about Boomer.
We have a lot more to go.
I know.
Should we give them a snack break?
You do have the power of pause.
Yes.
But we do want to talk about the family now that Judy is part of the family, and we're going to start with Boomer. And Kathy says
they haven't really acknowledged what Boomer did for Liz and the consequences, but she seems like she's expecting to spend the rest of her life in Wentworth. Even though the people keep coming and going, Boomer has more of a family in Wentworth than she ever had on the outside. Now that she's a peer worker, maybe there's something there that's worthwhile for her. Will she never get out, and will this be the only happy ending they could give her at the end of next season? I just can't see life being better for her on the outside. Unless, of course, Frankie and Bridget took her in.
Yeah, so many of you
that I say dream on.
Yeah, so many of you are still dreaming on Frankie and Bridget coming back. Rachel says, Boomer broke my heart again this week. She feels like she's the one who needs to kill Mari. She may have had a crap mom, but May was still her mother. I understand her feelings on this one. She did put her need for revenge on the back burner to get Ruby medical help. Her heart is always in the right place. Boomer may be in some more danger from Lou. If Boomer goes after Mari again, and I think she will, Lou will come for Boomer. If the writers have Lou take Boomer out, then Lou will become more hated than the freak. Boomer and Vera need to be the two who make it to all the way to the end.
Absolutely.
Period. Yes.
Quick on the trigger temper of Lou's is very dangerous. And
but in terms of the writing,
I want her to keep her hands off of Boomer.
Well, in terms of the writers, though, I don't think they can do that to us. I agree. Boomer and Vera have got to make it all the way to the end. There's no question to me that if there are two characters they can't take out, those are the two.
Okay.
Lauren?
I don't have Lauren.
You don't? Oh, I have Lauren. Sorry, you have David. Go ahead. David.
Sorry, Lauren. I would have loved to have had you. I didn't mean it the way it sounded.
Sorry,
the way
Lauren.
my wife interpreted it.
Go ahead, David.
Sorry, there's just days like this. What can you do?
Hopefully it's entertaining.
Boomer, offering to be the one that kills Mari, shows just how hopeless she feels. Pressing the panic button shows just how far she's come as a character.
Yes.
She would never have ever considered it in the past, but Boomer isn't interested in prison politics anymore. Her prison experience has changed her irrevocably. She now puts the safety of her friends and family above prison etiquette. That's a funny word, prison etiquette.
Prison etiquette, like an oxymoron.
Yes, I'd have to go put them in etiquette school for that. Now, girls, you put your shivs in your pocket. Okay. I feel Boomer may be on course for a breakdown this season. She's really struggling now, and we have to get to a point where we can start to build her back up again. Prediction! Vera will see Boomer giving up and recruit Frankie to instill the fight back in her.
Haven't we seen that happen already?
Season 9 will be about her fight for freedom.
Well, David, I don't think that's a prediction. I think that's a wishful thinking.
But was it Boomer that Frankie came to bolster the last time?
Wasn't it?
Was it B? I think it was B.
Oh, maybe. Sorry.
Anyway.
Anyway, we saw that happen before with somebody. Lauren says, I feel concerned for Boomer that in a way Ruby is her mate in prison right now, and we know Ruby will get parole soon. Well, do we really know that, Lauren? Not happy that Boomer will once again lose someone she trusts and feels close to. Also, I don't like the way this Lou situation is shaping up with previous Lou and Boomer encounters. There are clearly going to be more run-ins, and I now feel afraid Boomer will be overpowered by Lou, especially with Allie getting slotted. More on that in a minute. Yes, but let's talk about Ruby for a minute. Now that we've talked about Ruby, and she's finally starting to endear herself to some of you and to us,
and to us too.
Yeah, when I saw her with Boomer in that scene, I said to Mimi, "Oh, look! If they had done that all along, maybe we would have felt differently about her."
She was charming and sweet and vulnerable, and I liked her very much. And they weren't trying to pair her up with Allie.
Yeah, that helps.
Which didn't work.
So Lauren says, Ruby showing Boomer how to punch the punching bag was actually nice. If we saw more of that side of Ruby, we might care a little more about her character. David says, I really loved Ruby this episode. Her relationship with Boomer is sweet as hell. She's definitely more likable as a supportive friend figure rather than the obnoxious brat we got in season 6 and 7. I found myself rooting for her this episode. Keep it up, and I may even start to think she's more than a plot device. And
Diana.
Yeah, so Diana has an interesting that certainly doesn't apply to us, but maybe to some other people.
Diana says, can I make a plea for a fresh look to be taken at Ruby's character? Ruby's character in Series 7 clearly didn't work in the way it was intended. I'll try not to bang on at length about this, but it's hard to overestimate how deeply in the non-Indigenous Australian psyche hatred of our Indigenous people runs. Judging by their comments on their Instagram pages, the cast were clearly stunned by the online fan negativity towards both Roddy, I think. Roddy?
I think that's what she pronounced it.
I think so.
I know, but I think she said once that it's...
Okay, anyway. And the character of Ruby. But the pile-on of complaints that Roddy, whatever, was both physically and sexually unattractive, and that the character of Ruby was deeply unlikable because she was so angry. We stole their country. We tried to exterminate them. But non-Indigenous Australians have a pathological abhorrence of angry blacks. Well, welcome to America.
Ever was it this?
Yes, especially black women. The reaction by contributors here demonstrated that the character wasn't received positively even outside the slime of Australian racism. Hence, the rewrite of Ruby's character for this series. To quote Vera in terms of Judy, she's hardly more than a kid to me. To me, Ruby should be viewed through the same lens. I can find nothing to dislike in the Series 8 version of Ruby. She's kind, she's a genuine friend to Boomer, she's sensitive, she's unable to continue lying. Well, maybe Ruby just seems a lot nicer than me. And I said, no, I'm saying, you're right about that. She has been written and she's being played very differently this season, or series, as you all say. And it makes me really worry for her. The nicer she gets, the more worried about. The nicer anybody gets, the more vulnerable they become, the more I worry about.
I never blamed Roddy, and in fact, I kept saying she was a wonderful actress. I blamed the writers for writing her as a plot device, for writing her as a means to an end, and for writing her as an unlikable character. All they needed to do was give her a few moments, like in this episode, here and there, to show her humanity, her friend side. And again, when you try to pair people who just do not have chemistry, it makes us cringe. So all these things together just combine to make an unlikable character.
I have a little more about that later. Not about them, but in general.
Oh, okay. Well, I know.
For my soap
for your concluding thoughts. Anyway, but thank you, Diana, for again that Aussie insider.
It's a very sad but insightful
truth about many minority groups around the world. Unfortunately, I think. Anyway, I have two concerns right now when it comes to Ruby. First of all, they think she had a fit. What they don't know is that she actually had a head trauma. And so they didn't send her to get any tests done, which could possibly mean that she could have a slow bleed,
She has an aneurysm. Oh, no.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why she hasn't been able to box and all
Right.
that. So they just saw her having the fit. They don't know that it happened after she was slammed against the wall. So I'm worried about a brain bleed.
Yeah.
And secondly, I don't understand when Boomer came to visit her in medical. I don't think she was. I don't think she was passed out. Why didn't she tell Boomer that it was Lou, not Mari, who tried to kill her? Seems to me like it could be an easy thing to discover because she is alive and awake and can tell people. So I don't really understand that.
Well, I'll understand that.
Or maybe it's like a mini amnesia from the fit. Maybe
or maybe it's just something that the writers wanted to do to make Boomer
but
go
that
after
is
Mari
that
again.
would be stupid.
And not John Ridley-esque.
Well, unless this comes from above, is like we need this to happen so that this can happen and that can happen. But no, I don't know. I hope we get an explanation on that somehow. And a quick interesting note from David about Rita. Quick side note about Leah this season. She wasn't able to commit to a full schedule this year because of other work commitments. Mm-hmm. It's why her storyline is taking a long time to get going.
Hurry.
She's back full time in season 9 though. I'm glad you said that because when the series, when we heard the good news that they were coming back for 8-9, I immediately sent Leah a message. I was like, "Oh, you're gonna be there?" And she said, "Yes, I'm gonna be there." So I was really happy because I was worried because I knew how so busy she. I mean, she
Drover's wife.
She is writing
so many different
away.
things. She is just films and stage
and she's come here and had made deals with American distributors and things. So it's fantastic. I was so happy for her, but I was worried that would mean that she wouldn't be able to come back. So I was happy she said she would. And David, now you're putting it in perspective, knowing that obviously because of all this work, she had to. Take a back seat for at least a few
episodes. I'm eager to have her back.
What's Sheila's excuse?
Yeah, what's Sheila's excuse? It's not Sheila. I don't blame Sheila.
No, I blame the writers.
Come on. Don't promise us something and then dangle it.
It's so cruel to play with the lesbians. Okay, Mari. I didn't buy the whole thing about Mari's epiphany, but I feel I reminded myself of two things. The first thing is Mari's not a killer. Mari is a manipulative brothel owner who likes to be in control of everything. But she's also a person who suffered a lot of loss, starting with her son, and then the loss of her freedom, the loss of her control over her life.
And Allie.
So she is basically a grieving person trying to restore some sense of control over her life. She is in prison because she lost control because of her loss of Danny and punched the doctor, and then she
tried to escape and started.
Well, yes, again because she can't handle the fact that she's no longer in control over her life. She's a very controlling person, and I think that fixating on avenging her son's death, seeing that his killer was right there in prison, and it was so tempting to do that, was somehow her way of trying to gain back the control. So that's number one. But she's not, in her core, she's not a person who just murders people left and right. She's not one of those. The second thing is that if she did indeed see that black hole when she had, she didn't see a black light, but rather a black hole, maybe that kind of shook her into understanding what going after that path would mean for her soul. You don't even need to believe in heaven or hell or anything like that, but you just have to all of a sudden come out of your funk and say, "Oh my God, I'm not that person."
Well, also, I think people who don't even know they believe have some sort of hope.
Right. It's like all those people who find themselves praying in the middle
have some
of a
sort
disaster.
of a hope, and for you to sort of categorically in a near-death experience just see blackness. I think that could be very shaky.
Yeah. So I actually am willing to go along with this redemption story if it justifies itself along the way. Lauren says, despite my previous misgivings about the genuineness of Mari's epiphany and seeing Danny in prior episodes, it seems there actually was a transformation. I think, though, Mary doesn't seem to really understand that she caused grief and anguish to the other women by causing the siege, and she needs to pay for that. That is something that I agree with. I find that she doesn't seem to understand just how
Exactly
much
what
they
she
need to
did.
make. She needs to make up for things. Yeah. And Ryan says,
In the eyes of the women, Mari Winter went from brothel matriarch to pedophile enabler. After the siege, I suspect that the other prisoners found out that she bribed a pedophile rather than reported his actions.
I didn't even think about that.
Me neither.
With
She
the kitty.
deserves to be with the kitty fiddlers, child killers, and rapists in protection. Right now, she is experiencing the lowest of the low. Susie Porter is an outstanding actress.
She is.
Agreed. Who is taking this role seriously. Interestingly, what Ruby did to her son, an unapologetic rapist, Mary did to a doctor who tried to help her son. Mary will change this season. Her story is not over nor boring. And I agree. I just hope it's legitimate and not a ploy
Because again, I'm tired
for
of all
something, some other end.
Yeah.
Because it is interesting. And I love a series that lets their characters evolve and change.
It's essential.
If for the better, if for the worse, whatever, that they don't just stay, none of us stays on the same trajectory year after year after year, no matter what our circumstances are. And circumstances also will change how a person...
and prison is a big circumstance.
Well, yes, and there are ways to respond to everything, and sometimes people do go another way, and I find that fascinating because that's life.
And we just recently watched a preview for the season that we had not seen before, and we saw a little bit more about Sheila. And Mari meeting her, and it's like, oh, who are you? And they say something about Sheila being a mass murderer, right?
Well, must have been from her cult. It
right.
might
So
be
we're
Jonestown
thinking exactly
kind of
like a Kool-Aid kind of a thing. And so all of a sudden, David's saying that Mari is going to do self-immolation because of being enthralled with. That is something I really don't want to see.
I don't want to see that.
But I can definitely see, if that's the case, I can definitely see how Sheila could put a spell on Mari.
Absolutely.
If she's in a spiritually vulnerable place right now.
And it's also Marta Dusseldorf.
Marta Dusseldorf. She could put a spell on anybody.
You can tell that we're having a thing for her right now.
We're having a thing.
We're
always having a thing.
Well, we have to have a thing.
Of course.
For someone
it's
sometimes.
Interesting.
This is Marta's turn.
Yeah. Denise says, I can't get a read on what Mari is up to, but I think she's going to end up being collateral damage in this war between Allie and Lou. In fact, she might be killed while saving Allie's life. Now, that would be interesting, wouldn't it?
That would be very interesting.
That would be truly a redemption.
And the current person she seems to be becoming would do that.
Right. And, again, a redemption. Mm-hmm. Interesting. David?
I'm going to go out on a limb here, like you never do, David, and assume that people still hate this character.
No, not so much anymore as it's, I think, shaping up to be.
I've always had some empathy with Mari, but it was switched up to 11 in this episode. 11 out of what?
10?
35. She really is trying to find redemption here. Coming to Ruby's rescue proved that she is genuine here because there was no one around to witness this. And that is so
we always
interesting.
Say that.
What I always find to be a terrible betrayal is if someone does something in their private moment that makes you feel a certain way, and then it turns out later that it's not true, that we're faking it, they did it for another reason. In the people's private moments is when they are who they really are, when no one is watching. So let's hope that
the writers are going to be true to that.
And if she was trying to pull the wool over people's eyes, surely she would have done this.
I just called you Shirley again.
Surely she would have done this in front of an audience. She really did want to save Ruby. By saving Ruby, she is, in her head, saving herself. When she experienced the darkness during her suicide attempt, it terrified her. She wants to change and she wants to be a good person. I really do believe that. I really did feel for her when Boomer saw her with that shiv and assumed she was in on this plot to kill Ruby. And me too. I was like, no, it wasn't her. It wasn't her.
For once.
Yeah. Still, no matter how much the women hate her, how much they beat and maim her, she always shows resilience. Faced with Lou Kelly, she stood her ground and proved she wasn't just going to roll over and do as she's told. She is a strong woman, and this new conviction and striving for redemption, I feel, is going to make her stronger. Enter Sheila Bausch, stage left. Hurry, Sheila!
I don't understand, though, why she was so arrogant with Lou, unless she was just putting on a show just to make sure that she doesn't lose her. You're out of the frame.
Oh, sorry.
Just so that she doesn't think that she's a pushover. But I wouldn't be so confident. Good luck with that. Try kill me. See if it works out for you.
Well, also what I really liked was after everything that happened, she came back into the cafeteria with her head held high.
Well, but doing kind of like a funny thing with her mouth. Her nuances this episode were great. I loved also when Allie, when she comes into Allie's cell and she tries to tell her, "Oh, but please," and Allie pretends to be softening, but then of course telling her, "I'll be cheering."
I knew she was going to. Even though she did a good job, I just knew she was coming after her.
So when she kind of lets her go, Susie did a great job with kind of like, "Oh, wow, I mean, you've changed. Wow." She did a lot of really great nuances. And Diana, and I'm with Diana on that, said, "I'm awarding Mari line of the week for, yeah, but that's when I wanted to die."
Yeah, that's a very good line.
Jane, finally?
Oh, Jane is quite succinct.
I just had to end with Jane.
Quite succinct. Is she really sincere? I almost think so. However, I still do not care.
So I guess some of you still feel very strongly about that. Now, Ryan has a few other little prisoner trivia for us, which, as you know, I love, so go ahead.
Yes, the prisoner Wentworth trivia for this week. In the original, Mary Winter actually escaped via helicopter from the prison. This actually happened in real life in a men's prison in Sydney. It was also something that happened in a movie or a TV series.
Well, of course it happened in a movie.
Yeah. Also, there was a famous siege in the original Prisoner that was led by Lou Kelly, who abducted Joan Ferguson and locked both Joan and Rita in the laundry to fight it out.
Oh, my God!
Now, if I had been Joan and Rita, I would have thought, let's just pretend we're doing this, okay?
Yeah, but you're not Joan and Rita. They're very different types of people, especially Joan.
I'm not either one of them, and I'd come up to Joan's waist. The actress who played Officer Murphy in Wentworth season 4 through 8 also appeared in season 3 as Nurse Collins. Did anyone notice?
Obviously not.
Are we talking about
SVU?
A prisoner in Wentworth or just
Wentworth? I think Wentworth.
But Murphy was a fairly big character.
Well, yeah, again, SVU does it all the time.
That's true.
Okay, let's talk about Allie, and we have to wrap this up.
Yeah, because we are really blathering on.
Tell us what Ryan says.
Allie, lips and eyelashes Novak, is kicking ass as top dog. In this episode, Allie's anger built up when she realized that her perceived dead nemesis Joan the Freak Ferguson is actually still alive. Further, when Boomer informs her that her former lover Winter tried to shiv Ruby, her rage escalates. That final scene where she attacked Mari was brilliant. Well done, Jenko. Allie does all of her own dirty work. I've noticed that about her, and I really like it. Mm-hmm. She cuts Lou's finger off, chairs a meeting with the crew heads, and beats Mari herself. I know the other fans are still waiting to be convinced, but Allie is top dog material. Allie's style is more Jacinda Ardern and less Donald Trump. That ain't a bad thing.
You're not kidding.
It ain't a bad thing, but it's just hard to see Ardern as a prison top dog. She's so gentle, but she is so strong. But I would like to see Trump in prison.
I have a different opinion, but let's first read David.
This is the first time I've truly believed Allie in the role. Kate's really getting her teeth into this tougher side of Allie. I loved her interaction with Mari this episode. I do think she semi-believed what Mari was saying about not seeking retribution with Ruby, because when Boomer tells her that Mari was in the showers with a shiv, Allie is so angry that Mari lied to her. Can we just talk about that scene? Allie's attack on Mari was brutal, violent, and crazed. She was giving me Ferguson season 5, episode 1 vibes. Allie showed the women that she is not to be messed with here, and we were shocked at how intimidating she can be, but I like it. Part of me thinks this reaction to Mari lying was her acting on her fury that Jake had potentially lied to her about Ferguson's death. The anger directed at Mari was an anguished venting of steam at the news that the woman who killed the love of her life, the woman she tried so hard to vanquish, has endured again. I'm very excited to see how she reacts to Kath Maxwell, and I'm saying, aren't we all?
I agree that she may have been pushed to her limit with the Joan thing and just took it all out on Mari. Rachel's.
I think that there was also fury at Maury.
Oh,
though.
definitely
Yeah.
did it, but I think it helped
It
to
fueled
get it.
it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Rachel says Allie's not going to trust any of the staff after finding out Joan is alive from the news. Jake should have been smart enough to let her know himself, but again, he's a coward. My thing about Allie is that I just don't buy this aggressive, outraged, tough Allie. I need to see the transformation. I'm sorry, I need to see what happened to her in those 3 months.
We need some of those 3 months. We need some flashbacks to.
Because I just don't. It just doesn't seem real to me, having known her all this time. I understand her rage. I understand that she had this massive thing happen to her at the end of season 7, but I still don't get this huge trajectory without seeing some of the steps in the middle.
What I'm doing is I'm giving it.
No, I'm going along with it.
I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt because we didn't see that transition and having been through what she had been through. And then whatever, she had another 3 months to evolve.
In my brain, I have accepted it. In my brain, I've accepted it. But in my innards, every time I see that, I kind of chuckle a little bit. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't. It doesn't fit for me.
No, it does. It does seem a little bit like putting a mask on.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm. But she does it really well.
She does it excellent. No, Kate is doing a great job. But there's a piece missing for me to be able to make that leap. That's all. Now, Lou and Reb. So Reb had very little to do this episode besides being suicidal and then doing the magnificent acrobatics, which is, you're not a murderer. Oh, fuck yeah, okay. Okay. That was a split second. Woo, okay. And I think Diana might be representing quite a few of you by saying, Reb, well, he's not so nice. Being willing to have Lou kill Ruby, that's crossing a line in my book. Uh-huh. I was very surprised at that flip-flopping. Really. Didn't seem in character to me.
He seemed like a more gentle kind of guy, caught up in circumstances and desperation.
Well, yeah, but you know what?
He's losing himself.
But you know what? Let's start by saying he's not a killer. He shouldn't want his most important person in his life to be a killer either. For him. Secondly, what about... How about a life sentence that will come with killing Ruby? What about that?
Also, how about, aren't there prison advocates who can advocate for her for him to get?
He spoke directly to the governor. So
well, yes, but to get something that he is entitled to?
I don't know how much he knows about what he's entitled to or not.
But someone
I don't know.
knows.
Anyway, let's say that he doesn't feel hope anymore, and let's say that they're not the people who would immediately think about, oh yes, somebody will help because they're used to people not helping,
Someone should suggest he call Frankie.
But they don't have
She's
friends.
A lawyer.
They don't have friends in the prison. It's just the two of them. They're very isolated.
Well, but I bet...
Boomer is the pure one.
Kate Box.
Lou
knows Frankie.
Why would Lou know Frankie?
Because they might have been in prison together at the same time.
Oh, because Boomer was? I don't know.
Well,
nobody said anything about that. But
that's just
but
my
even
trying
if she
to
did,
find...
she doesn't know what Frankie turned out to be.
Right,
Frankie was a far cry from who she is today, back then. Okay, talking about Lou, Kathy says, Lou is all too willing to kill Ruby based on an offer Mary gave Reb. They hardly know Mary. Why would Lou be willing to commit such a crime for someone they don't know, and they also don't know if Mary actually will pay it? The fact that she called and made sure that she was loaded and had the money doesn't mean that she will actually give it to her. Even though we know Lou and Reb are desperate, once again, it's kind of unbelievable that someone would actually put that much trust in someone else that they barely know, i.e. Allie and Judy. David?
David says, what an interesting person. Her loyalty to Reb is all-consuming, to the point she will sacrifice her own well-being and freedom for his happiness. She is not one for ironing out the details of a contract before acting, however. Upon hearing that Mari will give Reb money if he kills Ruby, she doesn't even have to think about it and leaps into the action despite no assurances from Mari's side. She has no problems making herself a murderer for Reb. She is impetuous and ill-considered in how she goes about these huge, life-changing things, and I feel this makes her incredibly dangerous.
No
she
doubt.
doesn't think about the consequences of her action as long as she gets the results she wants.
Especially if it's for
Reb. This, for all we know, might be the first time she's ever been in love. She absolutely fascinates me, and I love Kate Box. Kate Box is just a revelation. She's fantastic. But if I were in Wentworth right now, I'd be very, very, be afraid. Be very afraid.
And David has a prediction.
Lou's blind loyalty to Reb will be repaid with betrayal. Something horrendous is going to happen that will cause Reb to disband from her. I agree, because I've already...
You've said that a couple of times, yeah.
I've already seen Reb looking a little askance at her, being a little distance from her.
But then he had no problem with her being a murderer for him.
Yeah, I know, but that's for his own benefit. That's not how he feels about her as the woman he loves. Yeah. What's the actress's name again?
The actress
Zoe Terakis.
Zoe Terakis.
Yeah, she's very good. That's it. I'm not talking anymore.
Sorry. Okay. Jane says, this is now taking a turn of love gone desperate. So far, when Lou gets desperate to help Reb, she loses her right mind. Could Lou become a dual top dog? Are we getting into a Sharks and Jets here? Now, Jane, if you want me to actually understand the reference, don't go with sports. Go with a movie or a TV show. I don't know what that is.
Sharks and Jets.
Oh, now I got it.
What it is.
Now I got it.
And I'm even going.
Okay. I'm sorry. I immediately thought that was football. Now this made me understand what it was.
There are Jets, but I don't think there are Sharks in American football.
Well, this just shows you how much I know. Thank you, Jane. Not only did you give a movie, but you gave a musical. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Now you're talking. Now you're talking my language. Took me a second. Okay.
Can we get back to...
Yes, yes, please, Lauren.
I'm sad to say I do not like where Lou's story is going. Her attack on Ruby sucked. Granted, it was more Wentworth and dangerous. But come on, ladies. Never ever stay in the shower block alone. I kept thinking the same thing. What are you doing there by yourself, you crazy little girl? The whole way she watches Ruby carefully, too, to assess when she is vulnerable to attack. Not nice.
Oh, because Lou is very preoccupied with
yes,
being nice.
And also she's there to murder her, so, you know.
Not nice. Not nice.
I understand why she wanted to get Reb the money. She is rapidly losing that closeness and control she had with the relationship. But I didn't think Lou was a killer in the past. Would she truly want to exchange her life's freedom for Reb's surgery? And it's just top surgery, too.
Yeah, no, this is, at this point, it's just for the HRT.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's just for the testosterone.
No, I don't think it's just for the top. I think it's for the surgery.
Oh, right. She did say she'll find the surgery. Right.
For sure, it is a high motivation to not see someone you love in pain and fear of losing them. But murder? I don't know. Apparently, yes, though. So
that's the bottom line.
There is a viciousness and lack of empathy in Lou for other people. In some ways, I guess this will make her more of a leader who is able to control the kitty fiddlers and baby killers, now that Anne has struck that deal with her. It now takes Reb out of the running to turn into a killer or to pursue Ruby. I'm guessing that storyline is now dead in the water, with Mari pulling her offer and Reb at least having access to the HRT drugs.
Yeah,
I can't see Reb as a killer. I just can't. This doesn't do it to me.
Rachel says, Anne's offer puts Lou in a position of keeping her promise to Reb, but putting her life on the line to do it. When the women find out Lou's been lagging to the general manager, her days will be numbered. The previews make it look like there will be fight for top dog between Lou and Allie in the laundry room next week. I'm not falling for it this time. I'm sure something will happen to keep this fight from occurring. Also, I can't believe that episode 5 is going to be the first time we've seen the laundry room all season.
Wow.
Finally, Linda says, as for Lou and Anne, I hope they both get what they deserve, as no one likes a lagger. Look what happened to poor Liz.
Not finally. About this topic.
Finally, about this topic. Right. Now, so we did see Lou fixing pronouns this week, which she didn't do last time. Interesting.
I loved the nurse saying, I said that. That's what I said.
And she going like, there were actually a lot of tiny humorous moments in this episode, and even when Lou tries to kill Ruby, and in the end when she said, "Oh, we have to get out of it," and then Boomer presses the panic button, and Mari scurries away. There was an element of humor. There was an element of humor to that whole situation, even though it was very serious. And so there was little bits of humor strewn
and
through.
And Wentworth is very good at that, because you really need a little levity to get you through the darkness of this show.
Yep. So, well, again, the preview seems very obvious, like Rachel said, but do we fall for it? I don't know.
Previews are so misleading.
Exactly. So we'll just wait and see.
I mean, in Thelma and Louise, I saw a preview, and they went over the edge of the Grand Canyon in a car. I mean, come on.
Can you believe it? Seriously, who do they think we are? A couple of ending thoughts. David says, heading into season 9, he's already thinking about season 9, I think we have one of the strongest cast lineups in years. Lou, Rita, Ferguson, Sheila, Allie, Judy, Boomer, all banged up together. It's an atomic bomb waiting to explode.
Yep.
On the other hand, we have Lauren's final thoughts.
I really do hope more good will also be included with the bad this season. I start to lose interest somewhat when so many bad forces seem all-powerful. And the evil GM, Ferguson rising from the dead, Lou and her new Evil Dead crew becoming more powerful. I get that there have to be good bad characters to make the good characters shine more. Lauren, you're killing me. I get that there have to be good bad characters to make the good characters shine more and to enjoy their moments in the sunshine. That there has to be a struggle, but I want there to be more balance. That being said, I liked this episode because it felt more high stakes and more happened, I felt, than the previous 2 episodes. Absolument. I'm hoping for more of these storylines. We just can't get enough of. I loved Frankie's story, Bridget's story, Bee's story. I was always dying to see more of them. I don't really feel that way about this show anymore. I like it. I enjoy it. And them. I don't really feel that way.
No, I enjoy it, and it's a fabulous show.
I enjoy it, and it's a fabulous show. But it's not the show that I was dying thinking I had to wait another week for an episode. How do you guys feel about it at the moment?
Very briefly, because we are.
I'm just going to say I agree to a degree. As a soap expert, I was just saying to someone the other day that really the thing that makes you a star, other than just being Susan Lucci or someone who just takes center stage all the time, is being part of a super couple.
Oh, we've said that a million times.
Being part of a super couple. And a super couple also brings interest and a lot of conflict into a story, and it gives you, we all need romance, and there is no...
Yes, I mean, think about how invested we became in Frankie much more when she became part of the couple with Bridget.
And Bee with
Allie.
Allie. I mean, Allie being with Bee made Jenko a star.
Right from the bat, even though she was new to the show.
Yeah, right off the bat. And we don't have any super couples now. We barely even have any couples.
I mean, Lou and Reb are sweet.
They are sweet, but they're not a super couple.
Right.
And this is what I think this is missing. I think that kind of romance, that kind of sexual tension, that kind of thing that we all like to see in our soaps, and this is a soap.
Absolutely.
Is missing.
I agree with you, and they are starting to build the family a little bit, but we need more of those moments, like we saw when they had the
braiding the hair,
the braiding with the humorous oppression,
I love that.
That's personal. Scene. Yeah, that was great.
It was such great vintage Boomer.
Yes, it was. It was vintage crop. You're right. We need more of that, and we've been saying that for a while now.
For years.
So if you're hearing us, I mean, it's already done, but hopefully we'll get more of that. And of course,
haven't had that.
The other missing ingredient is Marta Dusseldorf. So bring on Sheila.
Bring on Sheila. I'm tired of it.
Sorry.
It's okay.
You know our email, you know what to do, and we will see you right back here next week with another episode of Talking Teal after another episode of
Wake Up!
Bye-bye. Thank you for indulging us.